Hero of the Otherworldly Castle. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 176. Occupy them all. General. Less than 100 people were killed or wounded in today's battle. Lusu also looked at the gradually darkening scenery outside the pass and replied with a sigh. From the defense of the Cheyenne Pass to the counterattack, until now occupying the pass under our feet, the entire army has suffered less than 1,000 casualties. Our army can be considered to have suffered a small number of casualties, or 1,000 casualties. Deking sighed, looked back at the world behind him, and sighed. With this pass, we can live up to the heroic spirits of the martyrs. He then said to Lusu, leave half of the field artillery, let General Zhang come back, and lead the guard brigade to garrison this pass. Our battle is not over yet. Lusu solemnly clasped his fists and accepted the order. Yes, General. I will send someone to pass the order now. Deking issued this order because of intelligence from the country that there were changes in the territory outside the pass. Moreover, the basin within the pass has not been completely occupied, and there are still 3 cities waiting for him to attack. Fortunately, there were only a few soldiers left in the basin. In particular, they only needed to blast open the walls and castles of Shangdao City and capture or eliminate the 7 lords inside to completely occupy the entire basin. At noon the next day, Zhang Wei led the cavalry who had cleared the remaining enemies to the newly occupied pass. General Zhang, intelligence shows that there are some unusual movements in the territory outside this pass. I'm afraid that the invaders are not friendly. General Zhang needs to lead the original troops to defend this place. In the military meeting that afternoon, Lusu explained the current situation to Zhang Wei at the signal of Deking. Then Lusu explained again. General Zhang's guard brigade is mostly lightly armed soldiers, suitable for defense. General D has specially left half of the artillery for General Zhang to help defend. Deking borrowed Lusu's words and ordered, therefore, please trouble General Zhang to stay here. I will attack the Shangdao city that is resisting stubbornly. Zhang Wei listened to the 2 people's words expressionlessly. After listening, he stood up and clasped his fists to Deking and said, since General D and Lu staff have said this, I will just follow your orders. Because Zhang Wei was only the deputy commander, and Deking and Lusu explained it to him in detail, he had to stay at this pass. He was not a person who didn't know what was good for him. Through the cooperation in this war, Zhang Wei knew the character of Deking and Lusu, and knew that they were not deliberately alienating him. Because for so long, as long as there was a suitable combat opportunity, Deking would always send him up, and even these few days, the cavalry he led was a little too busy. So he accepted Deking's arrangement without any objection. When Deking saw Zhang Wei's cooperation, he nodded with satisfaction. Since the discussion had been made, Deking led the original troops of the infantry brigade to Shangdao City early the next morning. General, I wonder what you think of General Zhang. On the way back, Lusu hesitated for a long time, looked around, and couldn't help asking this question. When Deking heard this question, he frowned at first, looked at Lusu without answering, and when he saw Lusu's serious expression, he thought for a while and said, it's hard to say. When Lusu heard Deking's answer, he knew what the other party meant. He smiled and stopped asking more questions, and continued on his way. Lusu also asked Deking the same question before the war, but the results were a little different. The journey back to Shangdao City was very peaceful. There was no harassment from the enemy, and no unusual things happened. There were only some civilians fleeing. It was already the end of June, and the rice in Zaire was about to harvest the 2nd season. The people of Zaire were looking forward to the moment of harvest. Fortunately, there is sufficient fertilizer supply. Otherwise, even if there is enough sunlight and water, the fertility in the soil is not enough. The war outside the Cheyenne Pass is also coming to an end. What's going on in the city? Deking came to the position in the west of the city and asked the officers there. Report to General D. There has been no movement in the city in the past 10 days. The one who stayed outside the city was Yushu, the staff officer of the guard brigade. Yushu has been doing logistics work all the time. When the militia was needed to disguise the main army, he was transferred from the temporary logistics support department back to the front line, and has been holding on until now. After the end of the defense phase, although the pressure on logistics has increased, there are fewer things that need to be decided in time, and there is no need for a military staff to make timely decisions. So Yang Ren of the Rear Security Bureau has taken on the role of Director of Logistics Support again. Moreover, Yang Ren also learned a lot of useful experience in this process and gained a lot of growth, and the subsequent logistics support work can be fully handled. Deking saw the city wall that had been defended for many days and ordered, "Destroy the city wall, and the whole army will attack the city." Following Deking's order, the gunpowder that had been buried long ago was ignited. In a burst of earth-shaking explosions, the entire city wall in front of him turned into rubble and flew into the sky. In the castle of Shangdao City, the lords were shocked at first, then panicked, and then became extremely crazy after receiving the news that the reinforcement were intercepted and defeated. After the madness, they sublimated into wine and sex and enjoyed themselves to the extreme. Especially Lord Cave, his last bit of confidence was hit by the news of the soldiers who fled back to the city, and he was extremely desperate. He didn't dare to believe it at first, but after getting confirmation, he collapsed, followed by hysterical roars and despair. Finally, he asked all the guards to go out, leaving the naked maids behind, and started a crazy journey of wine and meat with other lords. Because they all knew that they couldn't run away. There were still 20,000 enemy troops outside the city that surrounded several city gates, and even if they wanted to escape, they didn't have enough troops. Unable to defend, unable to escape, after despair, this little bit of madness was all they had left to vent. Finally, the other dignitaries and common people who got the news were in chaos throughout the city, fearing that the enemy would come in immediately, and were making all kinds of preparations. Food, slaves, anything that could save their lives, regardless of gossip, regardless of whether it was useful or not, the dignitaries were preparing, while ordinary civilians could only wait for the judgment of fate. According to the gossip, this time Xia State was said to be breaking the convention, and Xia State would not let go of any lords or territories, not to mention ordinary civilians like them. The credit came from the Intelligence Bureau. Until just now, a deafening sound announced the fall of the city, and also represented the birth of the result of this war. But there was one last thing that had not been concluded in the war, and that was to thoroughly clean up and control the basin. Chapter 177 The King and His Minister. Your Majesty, General D reports that the war has been decided. Please ask Your Majesty, what should we do next? After receiving the intelligence of the war in the north, Chen Ping immediately came to see Yang Song. Yang Song was holding his second child in the study at this time. Zhao Chuan gave birth to a little princess for him, and he named her Yang Yan. Yang Song heard Chen Ping's report, humming something while thinking. He was thinking about how to deal with the northern basin, especially for the people in this world. He was still considering how to deal with them. Integration? It is difficult when the language is not understood, and through experiments, the Xia people and the people in this world have reproductive isolation and cannot be assimilated. Clean them all up. This is also difficult. What method and who will clean them up? Using the army will cause great psychological trauma to the soldiers. This is not like the battlefield. On the battlefield, you can do anything, but slaughtering civilians is completely different for the soldiers. As slaves, not only can they be used for mining, but they can also be used as commodities to sell to people in the northern world. It sounds good and is in the interests of the Xia country. Expel them. It is even simpler. It can not only save a large amount of food for Xia country, but also solve all the problems between people in the two worlds once and for all. The first two methods have been abandoned by Yang Song. Yang Song has been hesitant about the remaining two methods, looking at Chen Ping, who is respectful in front of him. Yang Song moved his eyes away from the face of the child in his arms, raised his head, and looked at Chen Ping, and asked softly, "Chen Ping, what do you think should be done with the northern barbarians in the northern occupied area?" Chen Ping bowed and replied, "I don't know what your majesty is planning, so I dare not belittle myself." Chen Ping kicked the ball back to Yang Song. As an officer of the intelligence agency, he had some things that were difficult to say. Just say it when I tell you to. Yang Song saw Chen Ping's reluctance and was a little dissatisfied in his heart and said seriously. He accidentally raised his voice a little too high and woke up the little princess who was sleeping soundly in his arms. Wow, the crying child made Yang Song know that his voice was a little loud and he hurriedly coaxed her, but he couldn't coax her, no matter how he coaxed her. At this time, the door of the study was knocked and pushed open. It turned out that the maid who went to make tea came back. The maid saw that the little princess was crying in the arms of the king and hurried forward and said, "Your Majesty, the princess is probably hungry." "Well, you hold the child to Xiaojun. Come, be careful." Yang Song heard the maid's words and carefully put the child in the maid's arms. When the maid carried the child out of the study, Yang Song breathed a sigh of relief, shook his head, and said to Chen Ping, "Hey, children are really hard to understand, and they are more difficult to deal with than those barbarians in the north. Your Majesty, I'm guilty. Because of me, I woke up the princess. Please punish me." Chen Ping spoke at this time, bowed and clasped his fists to apologize. He didn't even dare to breathe just now. Yang Song waved his hands and said unhappily, "Forget it, it's not your fault. How could I punish my right-hand man for a crying child? You should tell me how to deal with the northern barbarians in the northern occupied area. Thank you for your kindness." Chen Ping bowed again, looking grateful. At Yang Song's signal, Chen Ping stood up, thought for a while and replied, "I think the northern barbarians can be used as slaves. Domestic mines and overseas mining islands all need manpower." Chen Ping was in charge of the intelligence department. There was nothing he didn't know about what was going on in and outside Xia, so he made this suggestion to Yang Song from the perspective of interests. Yang Song suddenly remembered that there seemed to be a gold mountain overseas, but because gold was not very useful to Xia, and there was no manpower to mine it, it had been idle for a long time. If Chen Ping hadn't proposed this, he would have almost forgotten that there was such a place. And he remembered that when Li Bao reported to him, he mentioned that there was an omnivorous edible lizard on the island. If it could be artificially cultivated, he could also add another delicacy to the table of the people of Xia. The Guano Islands and volcanic islands overseas are all treasure troves, which are more practical than gold mountains. These places really lack manpower. So after thinking about these, Yang Song immediately agreed with Chen Ping's suggestion and ordered, "Well, let's do it this way. Send a message to the king and others. For the people of BIE, those who can be used will be used as slaves, and those who can't be used will be expelled." "Yes, I obey your order. Junchen is wise." Chen Ping praised his monarch when he received the order, but he didn't expect, "I'm wise? Then tell me where I'm wise." Seeing that this major event had been decided, Yang Song put aside his worries. After his thoughts were clear, he joked with Chen Ping. Normally, the compliments from the ministers are often just polite words. Who would have thought that Yang Song would not play by the rules at this moment and directly asked his ministers where he was wise? Wouldn't this embarrass his ministers? But Chen Ping was not that simple. Chen Ping did not expect that his monarch had such a side. After sighing in his heart that living with the monarch is like living with a tiger, he replied respectfully on the surface, "Your Majesty's wisdom lies in expelling all those useless northern barbarians." "Oh, tell me more about it." Yang Song originally just wanted to tease Chen Ping, but he did not expect Chen Ping to have his own views on this order. Replying to "Your Majesty." Seeing that Yang Song was interested, Chen Ping immediately bowed and replied, "Use the useful people and drive away the useless people. The useful ones can be made slaves, and the useless ones can be made into tools." Yang Song heard it and asked curiously, "Can they be made into tools?" Chen Ping bowed and said, "Drive the northern barbarians away from the Xia kingdom, and the lords outside the Great Wall must be taken in. Consume their food and use up their strength, so that the lords outside the northern mountains have no time to look south, and the new land can be kept stable for several years." Yang Song finally understood what Chen Ping meant. It turned out that those useless people were used as weapons. He nodded in agreement, then thought of the nature of these lords in this world, and asked, "These lords should not care about these untouchables in their eyes, right?" After hearing Yang Song's question, Chen Ping smiled confidently and replied, "Your Majesty, there are spies in the neighboring territories outside the basin. As long as I let them spread rumors, even if the Lord doesn't care, it will alienate the hearts of the soldiers and civilians, and delay the day of sending troops and gathering troops. Yang Song immediately understood. It turned out to be the same old trick. It turned out to be a strategy of alienation. The last time Chiang San-sheng was on a diplomatic mission to a small town outside the pass, he used it once. Although this strategy had no effect in the end, because of the war, he dared not underestimate the strategies of these wise men. In fact, the most important thing is that Yang Song didn't know that his order had such an effect. After Chen Ping explained it, he realized that the civilians he expelled for trouble actually had such an effect. Is this the so-called unintentional planting of willows in the shade of willows? Chapter 178 Occupy the Basin. With Yang Song's decree, the outside of the Shianqian Pass was in chaos. Before Deking asked Yang Song for instructions, he led his army to capture Shangdao City, occupied the defenseless castle, and captured 7 lords alive in the unsightly hall. When they were captured alive, Charlie Quill and Mike Oz wanted to resist while drunk, but were kicked to the ground by the soldiers of the Xia Kingdom. And most importantly, Lily Bill, as a female lord, could do such a mess in the presence of her husband, which made the generals and officers of the Xia Kingdom look at her frequently. It's really true that you can't judge a person by his appearance, and you can't judge the sea by a bucket. After Yang Song learned about this situation, he had to sigh. Your circle is really messy. In the previous world, he knew about the chaos in your circle from various channels, but he never took it seriously. He didn't expect that such a dirty thing would actually happen in this world. This is really a bit ruining. Yang Song asked himself that he was a monarch after all. Although he had thought about having 3,000 concubines in the harem before, he found that it was not so easy to be a monarch after he became the monarch of a country. Although the power is as great as the sky, it does not mean that he does not have to bear anything. For him, power is equal to responsibility. Now, let alone 3,000 concubines, he has no energy to deal with even 3. Even his marriage to Xiaolan and Xiaojuan makes him feel a little guilty. He is afraid that he can't fulfill his responsibilities as a husband and can't bring happiness to the two of them. This is his sense of responsibility. Fortunately, he now has this foundation. Sometimes Yang Song himself is thinking wildly. Maybe it is because of this sense of responsibility that the system chose him to come to this world. The mountains newly occupied by Xia Jiuo are called Linhei Mountains by Yang Song, and the basin is called Linhei Basin, and the pass in the mountains is named Chanhei Pass by Yang Song. The names originally given by humans in this world will naturally be discarded, and in the future, they will only be called by the names given by Yang Song and Xia Jiuo. After receiving the order from Yang Song, Deking immediately dispersed the army. He first accepted the occupation of the other 2 cities, and then divided the local residents into several categories according to their identities, abilities, gender, etc. As for classification, the officials of the Xia Kingdom were very familiar with it, and it was a piece of cake. The young and strong were brought back to the country by the militia, and handed over to Yang Zhang, who then distributed them to various mines. Li Bao's fleet also began to transport slaves. The only difference was that these local people with a certain degree of civilization were to be separated from the original Nanman natives, so a fine-tuning was made. All the Nanman natives in the domestic mines were concentrated on Filang Island and asked to mine guano. The newly arrived slaves with culture and civilization were scattered in various mines. Whether it was the Donghai Islands far away in the East China Sea or the Fuji Island, the island where Jinshan was located, that was about to be developed, all needed the labor of these people, and they were all young men. The useless old, weak, women, children, sick and disabled, were all expelled from Shanhaiguan and turned into refugees, which gave Lanny Parker, the lord of Nanshan territory near Shanhaiguan, a headache. Lanny Parker was ready to unite several surrounding territories to send troops to conquer this ignorant territory, but the other party played such a trick. The civilians in his territory were all restless, and the dignitaries were divided into 2 groups. He was not one of those bumpkins outside the mountain who didn't know the role of civilians in the territory. What do you think? How should we deal with these exiled civilians? Lord Parker asked his subordinates with a headache at the meeting. My lord, I think we should accept these refugees. A middle-aged noble with neat short hair bowed slightly to Parker and replied seriously. Lord Bert said it lightly. How should these refugees be resettled? Where will the food come from? A noble with a mustache on the other side immediately retorted. Yes. This year's grain production has decreased a bit, but there is no extra grain. Lord Dundee is right. How can we resettle without food? These are all dignitaries standing behind this mustached noble, and they all echoed Dundee's opinion. Bert was the middle-aged nobleman with neat short hair. He saw the strong rebuttal from the other side, but he did not argue. He just said to Lord Parker, Lord, the convention mentioned the duties of the Lord. Lord Parker frowned deeply when he heard this. In his heart, he was inclined to Andy's opinion, but Bert actually proposed the convention, so he had to think more about it. Although there are many contents in the Continental Convention, they can be divided into several categories. One category is the agreements that must be followed, such as not occupying the land of the Lord, not harming the Lord, etc. The other category is the agreements of such obligations and responsibilities, which can be turned a blind eye. As long as there are sufficient reasons, they can be completely ignored. For example, the Lord's duty, that Bert just proposed, is to provide survival shelter for civilians. The last category is a category that has no meaning at all. For example, lords should get along with each other in a friendly manner and not initiate disputes. Such an agreement has no value at all. So when Bert mentioned the Continental Convention, everyone at the meeting kept silent and waited for Lord Parker's decision. And he was actually secretly shocked. He didn't expect his old rival to use such a big move right at the beginning. If the Lord really fulfilled his duties as a lord according to the convention, his interests would be lost. Because Andy was in charge of the finances of Nanshan territory, he also had a large number of service-oriented stores such as casinos and taverns. Although more people could bring him traffic, those refugees had no money and only brought chaos. How could he do business quietly? So he strongly opposed the suggestion of taking in civilians. He kept silent at this time because he was thinking about how to give the Lord an excuse to turn a blind eye. The reason why Bert agreed to take in civilians was not because he had any sense of justice or sympathy, but because he needed this reputation as a civil official. At the same time, he also had many farms, ranches, and mines. As long as he had this group of refugees, he could hire them at a low price and make a lot of money from the reputation of kindness. Interests are the most primitive driving force. No matter how they argue on the surface, they actually have their own interests behind the scenes. Andy thought for a while, and seeing Bert's confident look, thinking about his good reputation among the people, his eyes suddenly lit up, and he took a step outside, saluted to Lord Parker and said, Lord, according to the convention, our territory should abide by the agreement, but, he emphasized the word but and said, but this is just the enemy's evil plan to make it difficult for us, and accepting these refugees from outside the mountain will also cause resistance from the original civilians in the territory, so our territory should let these refugees go to other territories and let other lords receive them. And his reasons made Parker's eyes light up. These reasons have sufficient basis. He is the primary territory to stop the enemy, and cannot be fooled by the enemy. Just when he was about to agree, a guard trotted in from the door and respectfully reported to Lord Parker, My lord, there is a man outside the castle who claims to be from the Garfield Chamber of Commerce and wants to see you. Chapter 179 New Enemy. Garfield Chamber of Commerce? Is it the large chamber of commerce in the southern part of our continent? Lord Parker asked in surprise. The guard lowered his head and answered truthfully, yes, the other party claims to be this name. Hurry up and invite them in. Lord Parker was sure that it was really the large chamber of commerce that controlled the entire southern trade, and hurriedly ordered the guard. After the guard left, Andy asked himself, or others in the hall, wondering, what are they doing here at this time? Are they going to issue securities again? In less than a moment, footsteps sounded outside the hall, and then a young man with a confident smile on his face was seen, accompanied by a servant. Following the guard, walking into the hall step by step with his head held high. The visitor put his right hand on his chest and bowed slightly to Parker, who was sitting on the throne, saying, I'm Bernie Clee, the representative of the Garfield Chamber of Commerce, and I would like to greet the Viscount on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce. Lord Clee, there is no need to be polite. I wonder what the representative wants to see me for. Parker saw the young man in the middle of the hall, who was extraordinary and polite, and was very alert in his heart. Bernie Clee obeyed, and put down his right hand on his left chest, stood up straight, and put his right hand behind his back. He asked with a confident smile that did not change at all throughout the whole process, "My Lord Viscount, I wonder how the Viscount will deal with these refugees in your territory?" Haha, what a coincidence. My lord was just discussing this matter with many nobles, and before any result was discussed, you came. Parker replied with a smile on his face. He did not have a condescending attitude towards this young man. As for the Garfield Chamber of Commerce, Parker and other lords in the south of the continent dare not offend too much. You know, this Chamber of Commerce controls the trade in the south, and these lords have many needs that need to be met by the other party. These lords are not afraid of the Garfield Chamber of Commerce, but there is no need. The lords need the Chamber of Commerce to increase their taxes and small coffers, and the merchants of the Chamber of Commerce need the support of the lords to do business in these territories. They just take what they need and cooperate with each other. Moreover, with the Continental Convention, these lords are not afraid of these merchants playing tricks. Bernie Clee nodded slightly, indicating that he already knew, and said to Lord Parker, "I came here to meet the Viscount to discuss something. The 7 territories south of the Hattentaohe Mountains are also part of the continent. They have always been at peace, but now they are occupied by a newly emerged territory called Zyaglo. This territory dares not to abide by the Continental Convention." Bernie Clee began to explain the reason. "And our Garfield Chamber of Commerce is also a member of the continent, and we should contribute, but our Chamber of Commerce is just a Chamber of Commerce, and we don't have any army, so our Chamber of Commerce hopes that the Viscount can abide by the convention and send troops to attack." After listening to Clee's words, Parker understood the purpose of the other party's visit. What is a member of the continent? For so many years, if it didn't involve the interests of the Garfield Chamber of Commerce, they would not care about the Continental Convention. The Garfield Chamber of Commerce is just a Chamber of Commerce, as Clee said. Many of the treaties in the Continental Convention are aimed at territories and lords, and have no effect on them at all. At most, it is an obligation of support, but it is not very binding. Correspondingly, without any obligations, there is no great responsibility, which is why the caravan is just a caravan, no matter how powerful it is. Parker knows that an important raw material supply area for the Garfield Chamber of Commerce is the 7 territories south of the Hattentaohe Mountains. This time, the loss of this cheap raw material supply area has caused great losses to the Garfield Chamber of Commerce. In the hall, Clee continued, "As long as we successfully conquer the Zaya Kingdom in the south, these refugees can return to their original homes, and the Viscount will not have to worry about these endless refugees." Parker knew the other party's general intention in his heart. He must send troops to conquer, but not now. The 7 territories in the south of the mountain range still have some strength, otherwise they would not have been blocking his harassment for so many years. It is precisely because the 7 territories in the south have some strength that they were quickly defeated and occupied by the Zaya Kingdom that suddenly emerged in recent years, so he did not dare to send troops to conquer immediately. At least he had to pull 10 or 8 other territories together to be sure. Originally, Parker had prepared troops to support the Shangdao territory in the south, but he thought that his army had not even assembled yet, and he learned that the Hattentaohe Sea fortress that had blocked their Nanshan territory for generations had been occupied. Later, refugees who came from the south learned that after the entire Hattentaohe Sea basin was occupied, he dared not send troops out anymore. Now he was even thinking about how to protect himself. Fortunately, after so many days of observation, the other party had no intention of sending troops outside the fortress, but was only focused on driving away civilians, causing a lot of refugees to trouble him. So when Parker heard that Clee wanted him to send troops to attack, he explained his difficulties to Clee very awkwardly. Finally, Parker said, "Your Excellency should also know the difficulty of this lord. This lord does not want to send troops to attack, but does not have the power. Although it hurts his self-esteem to say this, there is no way. Who made him just a viscount on the periphery of the continent? His power is really limited. This is an obvious fact." Clee saw the ugly face of the Viscount sitting on the top, smiled slightly, and said confidently, "My lord, this time our Chamber of Commerce has not only come to your territory." When Parker heard this, his heart moved. Could it be that the other party has been to other territories? Did they also go there to ask them to send troops to attack? Sure enough, Clee continued, "I have contacted the 3 surrounding territories, and they all agreed to unite and send troops to attack Xiago. The Viscount is the 4th lord I have met, and I will unite more lords in the future. As long as the Viscount agrees to send troops to unite, our Chamber of Commerce will provide all the food and grass needed by the army." Clee said at the end, and made an amazing promise in a confident and calm tone. What? Parker was shocked when he heard that the Chamber of Commerce actually provided all the food and grass. Before he was shocked, Clee threw out a huge temptation. In addition to providing all the food and grass for the army, our Chamber of Commerce will also provide 5,000 sets of weapons and equipment for the battle axe warriors to each lord. Although the other party did not say it explicitly, Parker also knew the other party's subconscious meaning. That is, these supplies will only be available after participating in the coalition, and there will be no "if you don't participate." Chapter 180, No Stop. Although Parker was very excited, he still asked in the end, "How many territories will participate in this alliance?" Clee laughed and replied complacently, "The purpose of this Chamber of Commerce is to unite all the territories south of the Barren River." Parker was even more shocked. He didn't expect that the Garfield Chamber of Commerce would make such a big move this time. The Barren River is a very important river in the south of the continent. It is also a river that divides the south of the continent into 2. The average width of the middle and lower reaches of the Barren River is more than 2 kilometers, so there are few bridges on the river. Most of the trade is carried out by ferry. There is a marquisate and 2 earldoms in the south of this river, as well as 18 viscounts, and countless barons and lords. The vast area north of the Hatenteohe Mountains and south of the Barren River has more than 5 million square kilometers of land and a population of tens of millions. It is possible for the Garfield Chamber of Commerce to unite all these forces and gather 1 million troops, just for a small Hatenteo Sea basin of only more than 500,000 square kilometers and a slightly powerful and barbaric Xia kingdom. Is it necessary? Parker thought about it, and knew that this was impossible. What about the south of the Barren River? It is estimated that the Garfield Chamber of Commerce can unite 7 or 8 surrounding Viscount territories, which is already a great feat. The 2 earldoms next to the Barren River in the north are unlikely to attack a hostile territory that has nothing to do with their own interests, even if this territory has violated the Continental Convention. Not to mention the Marquisate at the end of the Barren River in the west. The straight line distance between the 2 places is more than 1,000 kilometers. Although Parker thought about this, he still wanted the 5,000 sets of battle axe suits, which are heavy equipment that you can't buy normally. It's not that the battle axe suits are rare, but that no one sells such weapons and equipment, so they can only be made in their own territories. But it is not easy to make a set of qualified equipment. Even an experienced blacksmith will need more than a month. So Parker could not resist the temptation, and nodded in agreement. "Certainly, this lord agrees to join forces. I wonder when the supplies and equipment can be delivered?" As long as the Viscount agrees to join forces, half of the 5,000 sets of equipment can be delivered immediately, but the military rations can only be delivered after the troops are dispatched. This Chamber of Commerce will supply them according to the number of troops sent by the Viscount. The remaining half of the equipment. Clee bowed slightly to express his gratitude and explained. Parker also understood the other party's concerns. He was afraid that he would take the benefits and not fulfill his promise. So he nodded in understanding and said, "Okay, this lord promises to send out at least 5,000 elites." Clee was very happy to hear this truth. The 5,000 elites promised by Parker were not farmers who put down their farm tools and picked up simple weapons, but professional soldiers who had undergone long-term training. So 5,000 elites were already a considerable number. He resisted the urge to laugh out loud and remained polite, bowing and saying, "Thank you for your support, Viscount. When and where will we meet?" Parker nodded and smiled, then asked. Clee replied, "Viscount, the coalition forces will meet in your territory in half a year, so please be prepared." Then the two discussed the details of the joint expedition in front of many dignitaries present. After deciding on the time and place for the meeting, Clee said goodbye and left Parker's castle and territory. According to what Clee said to Parker when he left, I have to hurry to other territories so that we can complete the alliance as soon as possible. After sending off Clee, the representative of the Garfield caravan who suddenly arrived, Parker said to his men, "You have seen this matter, and the result has been determined." Parker looked at his civil officer Lord Burt, and seemed to have something to say, so he waved his hand to signal him not to be anxious, and then said, "As for those refugees, those who need them can recruit and take them in on their own." He was giving his subordinates room to play freely. He also knew that these nobles under his command had their own needs, so he did not completely limit them. When Bert heard his lord's words, he knew what he meant, so he did not continue to speak and acquiesced to this method. The news that Nanshan territory agreed to the alliance quickly spread throughout the territory. They did not have the idea of keeping it secret, but thought that spreading it out could deter the enemy. As a new neighbor of Nanshan territory, Xia Kingdom also received this information. Chen Ping, the intelligence officer of Xia Kingdom, has been working hard and planning for several years. Now he knows everything about the situation outside Shanhaiguan, but he still knows something about such a big thing. So Yang Song also knew that new hostile forces had emerged outside Shanhaiguan. In other words, as long as Yang Song wanted to expand, war would be inevitable. With war, there would be conquests, and with conquests, there would be violations of the taboos of this world. In this way, hostile forces would always be indispensable. Even if Xia Jiuo did not fight back or scold, did not take advantage, and did not use his ability, there would still be enemies. So Yang Song also figured it out. I would develop as I should, expand as I should, kill the enemies who came, and take advantage if I could. Following his own pace, it was only a matter of time before he would be hostile to this world. The current Xia Jiuo was no longer a territory at the beginning, but a country with enough capital. No matter how the forces outside Shanhaiguan united, Xia Jiuo's goal had been achieved. There would be no more fighting in a short time. The enemy's alliance could not be achieved in a short time, so Xia Jiuo had a buffer time to master and control the newly occupied territory. Chen Ping, tell me, how long will it take for these forces outside Shanhaiguan that are against the Xia Kingdom to unite? Yang Song asked, after listening to Chen Ping's intelligence about the newly emerged hostile forces outside Shanhaiguan. Chen Ping knew that Yang Song was asking about his thoughts on the coalition outside Shanhaiguan, so he bowed and replied, "Your Majesty, according to the intelligence I have obtained, the enemy should make some preparations after learning that our army is powerful. The time has been learned to be half a year later, but I estimate that this time is not enough." Half a year of preparation is not enough? Yang Song asked in confusion. The last time the 7 territories united, it only took 1 or 2 months. Why does it take so long this time? Chen Ping explained to Yang Song, "Your Majesty, the enemy's troops this time should not be less than 100,000. As the troops increase, the things to be prepared will also increase, and there are also hundreds of thousands of refugees driven out by us who are holding the enemy back." After listening to Chen Ping's explanation, Yang Song nodded in understanding. He knew that, when Xia Kingdom had only 300 soldiers before, it didn't need to prepare anything. But now that it has nearly 10,000 troops, the things it needs have increased exponentially. Chapter 181 Mission completed. How is the expulsion of the Aborigines in the Linhai Basin going? Yang Song heard Chen Ping talking about the refugees, and remembered the expulsion plan that was formulated not long ago. Chen Ping bowed and replied, "It is still in progress. It is expected that the residents of the main gathering places will be expelled in a month, and the rest can only be searched for a long time." Yang Song heard that it would take at least another month. He frowned and asked in a very dissatisfied tone, "Why does it take so long? Do we need to invite people to expel these people?" It's no wonder that Yang Song is angry. In his opinion, is there anything difficult about expelling civilians from this world? He is still waiting to complete the system task. "Your Majesty, calm down. This time is the time necessary to expel the people of BIE from Shanhaiguan." Chen Ping saw that Yang Song was about to get angry and hurriedly explained, Although it is simple to expel the BIE, there are many BIE people, and they are distributed all over the Linhai Basin. It takes time to gather them together, and it also takes time to select the laborers needed by Xiaguo. After hearing Chen Ping's explanation, Yang Song took a deep breath and thought to himself that he was a little anxious. How could he not be anxious? More than 100,000 enemy troops are gathering, but he has not yet completed the stabilization of the rear. If the enemy army completes the preparation in advance, then this war will fail. After Yang Song stabilized his emotions, he ordered, "Send a message to the army and militia outside Shanhaiguan. I want them to complete the expulsion mission within 3 months." "Yes, I will go and pass the message now." Chen Ping was about to leave. After receiving the order, Yang Song stopped Chen Ping, who wanted to pass the message, lowered his voice and asked, "Wait. Chen Ping, I ask you, can the death warriors you trained be used now?" Replying to the king, "There are not many qualified death warriors trained by me, and even if they are qualified, they can only be used once." Chen Ping heard Yang Song's question and guessed what he, the king, was thinking. Yang Song nodded and said with satisfaction, "Very good, it's enough to be used once. This time, all the qualified ones will be sent out. Do you understand what I mean by the rest? I obey your command." Chen Ping bowed solemnly and accepted the order. After that, he left the monarch's mansion at Yang Song's signal to carry out the task assigned to him by Yang Song. Yang Song asked Chen Ping to send out the death soldiers to delay time for Xia State, whether it was to assassinate the lord or disrupt the territory, as long as enough time could be gained for Xia State. Even if all the death soldiers died, it would be considered that they had played the role of their existence. He did not forget that he still had such a force in his hands. Anyway, he used people from this world. He did not need to feel sad if they died. As long as he spent a certain amount of resources, there would be another batch in a few years. Moreover, every year, due to the high loss of training, the number of people was insufficient, and they were supplemented. After a few years, it was considered that the regulations for training intelligence spies and death soldiers were completed. So Yang Song was not afraid of the loss of death soldiers. This action was the first appearance of the shadow that would scare the entire continental civilization. The shadow that was everywhere in the dark. Time came to the 9th day of the 9th month of the 5th year of Xianqi. This was also more than a month after Xia State occupied Shanhaiguan. Yang Song was playing with his 2 children in the pavilion in the back garden, holding a few-month-old baby in one hand, and his mouth was full of joy. Report. Your Majesty, Director Chen Ping has an important matter to attend to. The guards were used to disturbing their master's leisure time. Yang Song saw the guards rushing over from a distance, and he knew that today's wonderful leisure time was going to be over. He could only look at Xiaolan and Xiaojuan, who were around him, with a little apology. The 2 girls smiled at him with understanding, and without saying a word, they took the children, held them in their arms and gently rocked their bodies, but their eyes were staring at Yang Song's back as he walked away. In the study, Yang Song saw Chen Ping waiting, straightened his collar, walked quickly to the desk, sat down with a big horse and a golden knife, and asked, "What good news is there?" During this period of time, Chen Ping brought him good news every time he came, and this time he didn't want to hear bad news that he didn't want to hear. "Your Majesty." After Chen Ping and Yang Song sat down, they came to the desk, bowed and saluted, and replied, "Your Majesty, there is news from the Linhai Basin that all the northern barbarians who can be found have been expelled." Haha. This is really good news. Yang Song opened the small map and found that there were no local residents in the entire Linhai Basin, at least not on the small map. Maybe there are still unknown small mountain villages hidden in other deep mountains and old forests, but as long as there is communication with the outside world, they have been driven away. The ability to expel the locals so quickly is also related to the last war. As soon as the news of the coalition's failure in the Battle of Xianqian Pass was passed back to the 4 small territories in the south, the civilians in these places all fled north, and finally basically gathered around Shangdao City. Although these civilians started to flee again when Xia attacked Shangdao City in the end, they did not have time to escape far before the war ended. Therefore, it is much more convenient and quick to expel the civilians in the Linhai Basin. Another aspect is that Yang Song ordered the militia to participate in the search and expulsion plan. The carpet search of tens of thousands of militias was still very fast. According to the calculation and statistics, the total area of the Linhai Basin is about 500,000 square kilometers. The usable area is about 300,000 square kilometers, and the plain in the middle of the basin has reached 200,000 square kilometers. Your Majesty, this time we captured more than 100,000 young and strong men, and the number of people expelled is more than 700,000. It is estimated that at least 1 million people lived here in the entire basin before. Chen Ping's report made Yang Song understand this newly occupied basin. Such a large basin had only 1 million people in its heyday. If it were in the past, there would be at least 100 million people to have such a superior place. Not to mention other things, the entire Shu Basin, which is only more than 260,000 square kilometers, has a population of 50 to 60 million. Of course, even if there are no advanced technologies in the past, such a large place can easily support 10 million people with the hard work and wisdom of the people of Xia. Just when Yang Song was about to say something, ding. Congratulations to the host for completing the mission. The second stage of the main mission 1 has been completed. Phase 2, completed, expand and become stronger, task reward. 5,000 talents of various types. Yang Song finally saw the long-awaited task system completion prompt, which made him feel that this battle was meaningful and the sacrifice of 387 soldiers was worth it. Do you want to receive the task reward? Yang Song did not receive the task reward immediately, but first said to Chen Ping, you go down and get busy first. I have something important to do. Chapter 182 Mission Rewards. After Yang Song asked Chen Ping to leave, he sent someone to inform Yang Zhang, and he couldn't wait to come to the empty military camp in the Weather City. Since the war broke out 3 months ago, this military camp has been vacated, and this is the place where he can collect the reward. After Yang Song asked the guards and the remaining militiamen to leave the military camp, he walked onto the stage, opened the task system, and chose to receive the task reward. He was looking forward to what the 5,000 talents of various types described by the system would look like. After a moment of trance, a large group of people appeared on the empty parade ground below the stage, and instantly filled the parade ground in front of him. Ding. The task reward has been received. Looking at the large crowd in front of him, Yang Song began to look forward to it, wondering if there were any engineers that Xiaguo urgently needed. Now Yang Song often considers problems from the perspective of Xiaguo, and rarely considers himself. After a moment of confusion, the crowd saw Yang Song standing on the platform, and all bowed and saluted, Your Majesty. Then a few people squeezed out of the crowd, and bowed to Yang Song and said, Your Majesty, your servant Liug. Your Majesty, your servant Li Jing. Your Majesty, your servant Zheng Yu. Your Majesty, your servant Zhang Zhuzheng. Your Majesty, your servant Bao Zheng. Your Majesty, your servant Li Shizhen. Your Majesty, your servant Zhu Ziyak. Your Majesty, your servant Huok Wabeng. Your Majesty, your servant Liu Qi. Your Majesty, your servant. When Yang Song heard the names of these people, he knew that he had hit the jackpot. This was a large number of super talents. He didn't expect that the system rewards would also include senior talents. This was really a super unexpected surprise. Yang Song took a few deep breaths, calmed down and thought carefully. Since the system reward stated that there were various talents, these senior talents must be included. Look at the system's introduction to these people again, including various middle and senior talents in various industries, 7 senior talents or above. Liug, that is the famous Liu Bowen, a military strategist, politician, and writer in the late Yuan dynasty and early Ming dynasty. Liug assisted Zhu Yuanzhang in pacifying the world. When discussing the safety of the world, he was righteous. When faced with emergencies, he was courageous and made plans that no one could predict. The saying Zhu Liang divided the world into 3 parts, and Liu Bowen unified the country. Zhu Liang was the military advisor of the previous dynasty, and Liu Bowen was the military advisor of the later dynasty is widely circulated among the Chinese people. He is famous for his ingenious calculations and strategies. Li Jing, Ziyaoshi, an outstanding military strategist in the Tang dynasty. Li Jing has a majestic appearance, is good at using troops, and is good at strategy. He pacified Xiaoxian and Fugangju in the south, destroyed the Eastern Turks in the north, and defeated Tuayuhan in the west. He made great military achievements for the establishment and development of the Tang dynasty, and became one of the 24 heroes in Lingayan Pavilion. Li Jing has very rich experience in military management and combat, which further enriched the ancient military thought and military theory. Zhen Yu, Zi Wenruo, a famous politician and strategist in the late Eastern Han dynasty, and the chief counselor and hero of Kao's unification of the north. Zhen Yu was known as the talent of the king's assistant in his early years. He had handled military and state affairs for decades, and was called Maizifan by Kao. Zhang Zhuzheng, courtesy name Shuda, a politician, reformer, and chief minister of the Ming dynasty, assisted Emperor Wanli Zhu Yijin in carrying out the Wanli New Deal, which was known as the Zhang Zhuzheng reform. In terms of finance, he cleared the land and implemented the One Whip law, which included taxes and labor service, all of which were paid in silver. Zhang Zhuzheng also opposed the traditional concept of focusing on agriculture and neglecting commerce, believing that agriculture and commerce should be given equal importance, and proposed the idea of reducing levies to enrich agriculture and support commerce, reducing customs duties to enrich commerce and benefit agriculture. Bao Zheng, courtesy names Iron, the well-known Bao Qingshan. Bao Zheng was honest and fair, resolute in his government, not attached to the powerful, impartial, wise, and decisive, and dared to speak up for the people, so he was named Bao Qingshan and Bao Gong. There was a saying in the capital that, if you can't get through the connections, there is Yama Bao Lao. Later generations worshipped him as a god, and believed that he was the reincarnation of Kixing. Because of his black face, he was also called Bao Qingshan. Li Shizhen, his courtesy name was Danbi, a famous medical scientist in the Ming dynasty. Later, he served as the chief priest of the Chuangfu and the judge of the Royal Imperial Hospital. After his death, the Ming court conferred him the title of Wen Lin Lang. He went to many places to collect drug specimens and prescriptions, and worshipped fishermen, woodcutters, farmers, carters, pharmacists, and snake catchers as teachers. He referred to 925 books on medicine in various dynasties, and studied archaeology and physics. He recorded tens of millions of words in notes, and clarified many difficult problems. After 27 years and 3 revisions, he completed the 1.92 million word masterpiece Compendium of Materia Medica in the 18th year of Wanli in the Ming dynasty, 1590. In addition, he also studied pulse science and the 8 extraordinary meridians. His works include Examination of the 8 Extraordinary Meridians and Binghu Pulse Science. He was revered as a medicine saint by later generations. Zhu Xiaoak, named Hangzhou, styled Zhenzi, and alias Xiaoak, he was a geographer, traveler, and writer in the Ming dynasty. He wrote more than 2.6 million words. More than 2 million words were lost, leaving only more than 600,000 words, after 40 years of investigation, and was called a man of all ages. Zhu Xiaoak was ambitious throughout his life, and his footprints covered 21 provinces, cities, and autonomous regions today. He reached places that others have not reached, explored places that others have not known, explored the mysteries of the places he visited, and wrote travel notes to record the various phenomena, humanities, geography, animals, and plants he observed. Huo Guobeng, a famous general military strategist and relative of the emperor in the middle of the Western Han dynasty, he was a famous national hero in Chinese history. He used troops flexibly, paid attention to strategies, and was not bound by ancient methods. He was good at long-distance raids, rapid raids, large detours, large insertions, and annihilation battles. He opened up the Hexi corridor, accepted the surrender of Hexi, and sealed the Wolf's Lair in the Battle of Mabi. His historical evaluation is extraordinary. Liu Qi, styled Zinshu, a general who fought against the Jin dynasty in the southern Song dynasty. He was brave and good at fighting. He made many contributions in the process of conquering Xia and resisting Jin. In the 10th year of Shaoxing, 1140, he led Wang Yan's old subordinates to serve as the deputy governor of Tokyo. Together with Chen Jiui, the prefect of Shunchang, he defended the city against Jin. He defeated the enemy with fewer troops and defeated Jin Wuxi's horse. This was known as the Shunchang victory. The following year, he assisted Huaixi and defeated the enemy in Zegao with Zhang Jun and Yang Yizhang. He was known as a famous general of the Zhongxing period together with Han Shizhang and Yu Fei. After reading the general introduction of the system reward talents, Yang Song had a clearer understanding of these well-known talents. He sighed in his heart, this is really timely rain. Yang Song has always been worried about the lack of talents in Xia. Not long ago, after seeing the rewards of the system tasks, he made up his mind to do a big one. The result is mixed. The good thing is that one system task was completed and so many urgently needed talents were obtained. The bad thing is that Xia stood on the opposite side of this world in advance and the first stage of the main task 2 was still not completed. Mainline Mission 2, Glory to China, Ultimate Mission. As a descendant of Yan and Huang, you must shine the great and dazzling light of Chinese civilization in the new world. Mission reward, unknown. Improve technology to the electrical age. Phase 1, establish communication with local indigenous civilizations. Tip, conquer by force and communicate peacefully. Mission reward, mature steam engine technology. Phase 2, dominate one side. Mission reward, a standard division. This is only the completion of the first phase of the mainline mission. Yang Song looked at the mainline mission 2 displayed by the mission system and lamented when these 2 phases of the mission would be completed. Especially the first phase. This mission has been open for 5 years and he still doesn't know how to complete it. Is it that he has occupied a basin of 500,000 square kilometers now and this is not considered a conquest? Is it because he ordered the expulsion of the indigenous people? The answer is unknown. Yang Song came back to his senses from the system, looked at the 7 people standing in front of the crowd, raised his hand and said, no need to greet, Your Majesty. Yang Song walked in from outside the barracks at this time, saw Yang Song standing on the general's platform, and came to greet him. Yang Song saw that Yang Song arrived in time, and ordered Yang Song, you are here just in time. These are the 5,000 new talents. Go and register them, and then arrange accommodation. Yang Song was not surprised by the new people in this industry. He was used to it. Hearing Yang Song's rich experience, he immediately bowed and said, yes, Your Majesty. When are you? Oh, for the time being, you will follow Yang Song to help and serve as the deputy of Director Yang. Yang Song looked at the 7 talents in front of him, and arranged things for Zhen Yu who was standing in the middle. Then he arranged a deputy position for several other people. Bao Zheng was arranged to the Law Bureau to serve as Bao Ji's deputy. Zhang Zhuzheng was arranged to the Finance Bureau. Li Shizhen was arranged to the Medical Bureau. Zhu Ziyak was arranged to the Works Bureau. And Hu Okubeng and Liu Qi were sent to Shanhaiguan. Liu Bowen and Li Jing did not assign any positions to them, but directly asked them to go to the Intelligence Bureau to learn about the current situation of Xia State. These people will be of great use to Yang Song. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 183 Assassin's Creed. Bob is an assassin, an unemotional assassin. He was trained at the Xiaguo intelligence base, under the tutelage of Master Chen Ping. After 2 years of hard training, he finally gained Master Chen's recognition, and was qualified to go out on missions. When he was training, he knew what an assassin was, and how to become a qualified assassin. That is, he must be unemotional. In the end, he lived up to Master Chen's expectations, successfully passed many tests, and became a qualified assassin. Bob is now walking on the streets of Nanshan City, preparing to find a place to stay tonight. It is no longer possible to live in places like hotels. His companions have been making too much trouble during this period, making the city a little nervous. Bob has been shopping for a day, and chose a wealthy businessman's house. Looking at this fairly luxurious house, he couldn't help but think of his previous life. Back then, he was just a miserable carpenter apprentice, with endless work to do every day, never full, and would be beaten by the carpenter master if he was not careful. As his carpenter master said, "You are my apprentice now. You have to bear the consequences when I beat you, when I'm upset." Thinking about today, the lives of all the people in the city are in his hands. He can harvest whenever he wants. This is a completely different feeling. Hey, although I almost didn't make it during the training, Bob sighed in his heart. Training is really difficult. Those who can't make it will die. Anyway, these people don't think their lives are valuable, so it doesn't matter. Besides, they can still eat during training, although most of the time they have to eat from their teammates. But he is not the same person now. All these are in the past. Now he doesn't say that he regards human life as worthless, but it's not much different. While recalling his past experiences boredly, while watching the sky getting dark, he has already chosen the goal for tonight. If it weren't for the fact that the Viscount Lord of this place was so afraid of death that he didn't even leave the castle, I wouldn't have targeted this financial officer. Bob, wearing a dark coat, moved quickly in the dark. Even if the streets of Nanshan City were under curfew, he could quickly pass through them during patrols. This was just the basic skills of their assassins this time. People who didn't have this ability would have died long ago. Soon Bob came to the outside of a mansion. Looking at the heavily guarded gate, he was about to laugh contemptuously, but he remembered Master Chen's teachings. They were assassins without emotions. So he turned and walked into the darkness, came to the place he found after a few days of scouting, took out his tools, quickly climbed up the wall, and flipped into the mansion. Bob looked at the courtyard with no one in it, which was a typical tight outside and loose inside. He thought to himself, as expected, these dignitaries are really inexperienced. They think that guarding the gate can ensure safety? Only a fool would go in through the gate. He is not playing assassin Washang. He quickly and quietly reached the outside of the master bedroom of the mansion, looked at the room with the lights off, and gently climbed in through the window, although the door was not closed. Bob also saw that the bedroom door was not closed, but he was an assassin. Is there an assassin who doesn't climb through the window and go through the door? Anyway, he has never seen one. He thinks he still has to have the bottom line of an assassin, although he doesn't know why he cares so much about these strange places. There was no sound when he landed. Bob was very satisfied with his professional skills in his heart, but on the surface, he approached the bed without any emotion. After confirming that the fat man on the bed was his target, he quickly pulled out the poisoned dagger with an aesthetic effect from his waist and stabbed the fat man lying on the bed. The sharp blade cut across the target's throat. After the opponent's body instinctively twitched twice, he opened his eyes angrily and left the world without a word. After confirming that the target was dead, Bob nodded with satisfaction, looked at the little beauty lying next to the fat man who had no feelings at all, secretly said it was a pity, and decisively returned the same way. Then they sneaked cautiously and came to the place they had chosen during the day, the residence of the rich businessman. They found the second bedroom of the rich businessman in the residence, hugged the little beauty who had been anesthetized, and lay on the bed, thinking about whether there were any loopholes in today's operation. After feeling that there were no loopholes, they hugged the daughter of the rich businessman and had a good sleep. When Bob rested well the next morning, he quickly cleaned up the few traces without the owner's knowledge, left the residence, and continued to look for the next target. When they came out to perform the mission, they received an order. They must stay out for a full year. The target of the assassination can be chosen at will, as long as it can cause chaos. There is no problem in assassinating a hostess. As for the exposure of identity and other issues, it is not necessary to abide by it. Anyway, anyone with a brain knows that this assassination was done by Zhao. And before leaving, Master Chen also said that this was an assessment. If it was exposed and the assassination failed, the result would be death. Even if they wanted to escape, they would only become the target of the next batch of assassins. Bob knew what kind of perverts were being trained in the deep mountains and old forests. He didn't want to become their target in the future. He wouldn't have it as easy as it is now. No matter how powerful he was just one person. There were countless people like him in the training base, and there were countless people who were more powerful than him. He shuddered at the thought of constantly fleeing and not having a peaceful sleep. He secretly made up his mind that he would never rebel against the Xia kingdom even if he died. Bob tightened the rough linen he was wearing and thought about his next target. He decided that the next target would be the lord of this place, Viscount Lanny Parker. Because he had collected the information he wanted, every few days, there were several carriages transporting manure in and out of the castle. Bob decided to take this opportunity to sneak into the carriage team and enter the castle to find out the information inside the castle. As for how to sneak into the carriage team transporting manure, it was not difficult for him. He just had to hang under the carriage transporting manure. The guards who checked had never seen the carriage. After several infiltrations, he unexpectedly got a piece of information. Viscount Lanny Parker was going to hold a banquet in the castle in 3 days. Bob had already planned that he was going to do something big. He was going to assassinate everyone at the banquet. The result, of course, was unsuccessful. At the last moment, when he was about to enter the kitchen to poison, he was discovered by a servant in the kitchen. The servant was actually lazy under the window. Damn, bottom line. He saw that he could not complete the plan. For his own life, he had to deal with the yelling servant and quickly leave the castle. Fortunately, his escape was still very successful, and there were more than 100 assassins like Bob outside Shanhagen. Some acted in groups of 3 or 5, and some acted alone like Bob. No matter what method they used, they all caused great chaos outside the pass. Since Yang Song ordered Chen Ping to send a group of trained and qualified assassins out of the pass, there has not been a day of peace outside Shanhagen. Chapter 184 Year-End Conference. For the first time, people in this world knew that there was such a profession as assassin. While pushing Xiago to a higher level, it also gave Xiago some buffer time. The plan of the Garfield Chamber of Commerce to unite with these lords was also delayed. After learning that the territory outside Shanhagen was already overwhelmed, Xiago began to develop with peace of mind. 3 months passed like this, and it was almost the end of the 5th year of Qianqi, and the new year was about to begin. In these 3 months, the 5,000 new talents were all adapting to and understanding the current situation of Xiago, so as to facilitate the discovery and raising of problems. According to the intelligence collected, in the new year, all the problems that plague the development of Xiago will be solved. It can be predicted that the 6th year of Qianqi will be a year of Xiago's takeoff. Now Shanhagen, the northernmost part of Xiago, has been guarded by D King's infantry brigade and Zhang Wei's guard brigade. By the way, the external city wall was repaired and modified to make it more in line with the requirements of Xiago's military defense. After the Linhe Basin was occupied, it became a no man's land because of the expulsion policy implemented by Xiago, except for Shanhagen. All the castles and city walls in the basin were demolished, and the houses were damaged and turned into piles of raw materials for future reconstruction. As for the reason for demolishing the city walls, castles, and houses, it was that these buildings did not meet the requirements of the Xia kingdom at all. It was more convenient to rebuild than to renovate. Not all of them were demolished. The only thing left was the noble and wealthy area in the original Shangdao city. This area still had room for reconstruction, which was related to the serious polarization of this world. The buildings in the noble and wealthy area in Shangdao city still had some exquisite features, such as the mansion built by Quan Shilai, with magnificent exotic style decorations, which still had certain value. The Xia kingdom did not leave this basin alone. The 2 brigades stationed in Shanhagen would regularly send cavalry patrols, mainly to see if there were any fish that slipped through the net and were not driven away. Not to mention, after several months of patrolling, the Xia kingdom really found some mountain villages in the deep mountains and old forests. The moment these small mountain villages were discovered by the Xia kingdom, their fate of being expelled had been determined. As for those small mountain villages that have not been discovered, Yang Song can't do anything about it now. Only when the people of Xia kingdom develop and expand in the future, these people will be cleared out sooner or later. Another thing worth mentioning is that there is more than one road leading to the outside world in the Linhe Mountains, but except for the trade road, where Shanhagen is located, the rest are small roads. Even if these small roads were finally blown up when the expulsion plan was carried out to check the basin, don't think about passing through these places in the short term. The Shiankian Pass of the Shiankian Mountains is now completely in the hinterland of Xia Kingdom. Usually, there are only 100 militiamen guarding and maintaining it, and it has no great effect. Maybe in the future, after Xia Kingdom loses the war, this place can once again serve as the last protective barrier of Xia Kingdom. Further south, in the base camp of Xia Kingdom, Shianki City, Yang Song convened the last court meeting of Shianki 5 years, the year-end meeting. Gentlemen, this year is a busy year, and it is also a difficult year. Xia Kingdom even faced a crisis of destruction. After the meeting, Yang Song began to speak. Fortunately, with the dedication of all the soldiers, the efforts of the officials, and the efforts of the people, the whole country united as one, and overcame this difficult time. This is all thanks to your support. I'm very relieved. All the officials stood up, and bowed to Yang Song, and said in unison, "Your Majesty is wise. No need to be polite, take a seat." Yang Song waved his hand and continued, "This war took more than 3 months. 387 soldiers died, 132 militiamen, and thousands of wounded and disabled. It can be said that the loss was heavy. But we drove out, and defeated the enemy, and occupied the entire coastal basin in the north, eliminated more than 50,000 enemy troops, captured more than 100,000 young and strong laborers, drove nearly 1 million northern barbarians out of the country, and increased the territory of Xia by more than 500,000 square kilometers." This is Yang Song telling everyone about the gains of this war. After hearing what Yang Song said, the officials present all smiled, and were very happy, because they had contributed to it. After Yang Song finished talking about these important gains, he did not wait for everyone to be happy, and changed the topic. "In this battle, I also found many problems. There are not enough soldiers to fight, the logistics support capacity is limited, and the administration is very chaotic. These are all problems." The officials in charge of the aspects mentioned by Yang Song all lowered their heads, not living up to their previous happy appearance. Among them, Yang Song, who was in charge of administration, felt ashamed and felt that he could not face the trust of the king. These problems are now urgently needed to be solved. Let's not talk about them for the time being. I'd better listen to your year-end reports first. Yang Song decided to hold this topic and listen to the reports of various departments on this year. As expected, Yang Song, the director of the administration department, took the lead in speaking. "Your Majesty, as of yesterday, Xia State has a population of more than 400,000, with an increase of nearly 100,000, including more than 13,000 newborns. The grain reserves are enough for the people of the whole country to eat for 1 month, and the grain output is." Yang Song reported this year's population growth, new babies, agricultural and animal husbandry production, commercial development, mineral output, new official roads, etc., among which population is the top priority. At the end of the report, Yang Song bowed and apologized. "I have failed the trust of the emperor. I have limited ability and cannot share the worries of the emperor. Please punish me. We will talk about whether I'm guilty later. Now listen to the reports of other departments." Yang Song frowned and asked Yang Song to sit down. He was still waiting for the reports of others. Next was ZHUZ, who was in charge of education. He reported, "I have important things to report. Please forgive me, my emperor." Yang Song was curious in his heart. Did ZHUZ violate any law? He asked, "What important things does Mr. ZHU have, and what is his crime?" "Your Majesty, after some exchanges with the 1,500 new teachers, I found that the newly opened university has great problems." ZHUZ said this, first sighed, then took a deep breath, and said ashamedly, "This university is not up to the level of a university at all. The professional courses are not perfect, and the professor's knowledge is not deep enough." After listening to Yang Song, he understood the symptoms. Isn't this caused by the lack of professional talents? Now that the problem has been discovered, and there are enough talents, it is a good thing. He had no choice. It turned out that he was going to skip the higher education and directly open a university. This university was originally experimental in nature, and it was an attempt to allow Xiaguo to develop independently in the future. The result of the experiment was also obtained in ZHUZ's report just now, a failed attempt. Yang Song sighed in his heart. It seems that there is still a long way to go to completely leave the assistance of the system. It's okay. Now that the problem has been discovered, we will take it step by step and down to earth. Let's downgrade this university to a higher education and fill the gap that Xiago has no higher education first. Yang Song waved his hand, indicating that it was not because of ZHUZ, and there was no sin. The subsequent reports from various departments were mostly summaries of some previous work. There was nothing too outstanding, and there were no mistakes. Among them, Li Ji of the Military Industry Bureau and Yang Ren of the Rear Security Bureau made a detailed summary of the consumption of this war PS. Li Ji should be Li Ji, and it has been written wrong all the time. Vertical bar vertical bar. Chapter 185 Preparing for a Form. Your Majesty, colleagues, this war took nearly 3 months, consuming more than 3 million catties of food and grass, more than 150,000 shells, more than 2,000 transport carriages, and more than 100,000 young and strong prisoners of war. Yang Ren gave a detailed explanation of the transportation and logistics support during the war, especially the consumption of food, which was still as large as before. As long as there is a war, the consumption of food and grass is inevitable. This is a rigid expenditure. Yang Song has no choice but to work hard to develop. Then Li Ji also reported on the production of weapons and ammunition. Your Majesty, the production of weapons and ammunition has been continuing. The monthly output of ordinary weapons is more than 1,000 pieces. Leather armor and armor are 300 sets. Heavy armor is 10 sets. And artillery is 10 guns. Can the stored weapons and equipment meet the needs of forming a new infantry brigade? Yang Song felt that the current strength of Xia State was not enough, and he wanted to expand the army. Your Majesty, it's not enough. Li Ji answered Yang Song's question with a cupped hand, and then explained. The main reason is that the number of artillery is not enough to meet the needs of an infantry brigade, not to mention that siege artillery cannot be manufactured with the existing technology. Yang Song understood that it was still caused by the lack of productivity in Xia State. Fortunately, the system rewarded 5,000 talents. According to statistics, in addition to the 1,500 middle and senior teachers who accounted for the majority, most of the others were engineers of various industries, and there were more than 100 officers at all levels. In addition, Hu Okubeng and Liu Qi, 2 generals who were obviously prepared by the system for him, were obviously going to expand the army. The system was telling him that the army of Xia State was not enough. This was also the reason why he wanted to expand a brigade again. Now there are talents, but the productivity of Xia State has dragged down the expansion of the army. Yang Song sighed in his heart, thinking that he could only take a step back. If the infantry brigade could not be formed, then a guard brigade would be formed. Suddenly, he remembered the system's introduction to Hu Okubeng, the military genius, who seemed to be very good at mobile warfare and annihilation warfare, and Yang Zhang's report just now mentioned that there were more than 5,000 war horses available in the horse farm. Yang Song had a new idea, but there was no rush now. He would discuss it with Li Jing later. He looked at the ministers who had finished their reports and proposed the next topic, saying, I deeply feel that there are many imperfections in the Xia Kingdom's system and I'm determined to change this problem. If you have any suggestions, please feel free to speak up. As Yang Song's voice fell, the many ministers in the council hall looked at each other, and no one spoke, because they didn't know what kind of system Yang Song, the monarch, wanted to establish. Yang Song looked at the ministers who didn't say a word and frowned. He didn't know what the ministers were thinking, but they all kept silent. Just as he was about to call out the names, he saw Yang Zhang standing up and bowing to him, saying, I dare to ask what kind of system your majesty wants to establish? Yang Zhang was not afraid. He was the first person to follow Yang Song, and he knew something about Yang Song's character. Moreover, it was for this reason that he clearly knew his own ability. After listening to Yang Zhang's advice, he realized that he had not yet come up with an outline, so how could the ministers give suggestions? Moreover, the problem of this system could not be figured out in a short time, and he had to give everyone some time to consider. So Yang Song said, then I will come up with an outline first. You can think about it slowly when you go back, and we can discuss it again at the next year's Grand Court meeting. Then, regardless of the reactions of the people at the meeting, He explained to the ministers the outline he had thought of for a long time. First, the use and belonging of the military and civilians must be separated. Second, each department should be upgraded to a hall, and the functions of each department should be improved. Finally, there should also be a charter for the promotion, transfer, and demotion of officials. Finally, the distribution of power must be detailed and effective, and it cannot be too concentrated or too dispersed. To be honest, these requirements are a huge problem in Yang Song's eyes. It's not that he is making things difficult for these ministers, but he himself has no other way. He is just one person, and he thinks that he is already very good to think of these. For this reason, he made these ministers have no good year to live, and they all thought about the difficult problems raised by Yang Song, the monarch. If they don't have any insights at the next court meeting, it will become deceiving the monarch. After this proposal was completed, Yang Song proposed again. After this war, I found that the current territory of Xia state is very vast, but the population is limited, which is not conducive to the development and use of these lands, leaving a lot of land in vain. Tell me, what can be done to solve this problem? Most of the abandoned land is the original land in the coastal basin. The land south of Qian Pass is easy to say. It is used as much as it is reclaimed. There is no room for wasteland. I suggest suspending the reclamation of the south and moving all the newly added people to the coastal basin. Yang Zong was the person who was most familiar with the internal affairs of Xia state, so he had to make the first suggestion at this time. Zhang Yu stood up, bowed to Yang Song and said, "Your Majesty, I second Director Yang's proposal, but I think there are some details that need to be slightly changed." Zhang Yu's euphemistic words were just another way of saying that he disagreed while trying to save Yang Song's face. Yang Song was very excited to hear that this great talent had a suggestion. He looked at Yang Song and said seriously, "If Wen Ruo has any suggestions, just say it." The subtext of this sentence was to tell Zhang Yu and Yang Song that he only looked at ability and not to do unnecessary things. "Yes, I obey your order." Zhang Yu understood Yang Song's meaning and took the order and directly suggested, "I suggest that the reclamation of wasteland in the south does not need to be completely stopped, but only needs to be slowed down, and the existing land can be consolidated. As far as I know, the land in the Linhai Basin does not meet the requirements of the country's farming and needs to be greatly rectified. Therefore, I suggest that a small number of experienced people can be relocated to lead most of the new people to carry out land rectification. In this way, the status of the original people after immigration will not affect the people's hearts, and the new people can live and work in peace and contentment with their homes, and the Xia kingdom can also quickly use the land in the Linhai Basin." After Zhang Yu finished explaining his suggestions in detail, he bowed to Yang Song again and sat down. "Very good. Does anyone else have anything to add?" Yang Song nodded, very satisfied. Zhang Yu's suggestion made Yang Song realize the difference between people's abilities. Yang Song's suggestion was only a rough outline, while Zhang Yu's suggestion involved all aspects and was very detailed. He could even immediately implement this method. Yang Song could imagine the rapid changes in the Linhai Basin after this method was implemented. He couldn't help but sigh that people really couldn't be compared. Chapter 186 Reform Discussion. The last Grand Court meeting of the 5th year of Qianqi ended at nightfall. Many ministers and officials returned to their respective residences and began to contribute their wisdom to the upcoming reforms. Forget about having a comfortable new year. And Yang Song himself began to turn his brain, listing all the political systems he knew and analyzing their pros and cons. The system of 3 dukes and 9 ministers? The power is too concentrated, and the power of the prime minister is too huge, which is not conducive to the development of the country, and the scope involved is too small, and many aspects are not managed at all. The system of 3 provinces and 6 ministries? It is a mature feudal political system, but it is too feudal. The system is not perfect compared to later generations. This system is completely established to consolidate the imperial power, and is of no help to development. However, the system of 3 provinces and 6 ministries can still be used as a reference. Besides, the current Xia kingdom does not have too many affairs to manage. As long as a framework that is conducive to future development is set up, it will be good. The most important thing is that the system after the reform must have great development potential. Without this, even the mature system will not be adopted. At the New Year's Eve banquet, Yang Song led his family and descendants to attend the year-end banquet for the first time. Everyone, please eat and drink well tonight. You have worked hard this year. Yang Song raised his glass and said loudly, "Come, I will toast you all." No, it is us, the ministers, who should toast the emperor. Your Majesty is wise and powerful. I toast you. Your Majesty, I toast you. After 3 cups, Yang Song pointed to the baby in the arms of Xiaolan and Xiaojun, who were sitting next to him, and said happily, "Let me introduce you to this. This is my eldest son, Yang Xian." Xiaolan on the left hand held Yang Xian, and stood up with Yang Song's introduction, smiling at the many ministers and officials present. "Your Majesty, I greet you, the eldest son and the eldest lady." All the ministers stood up and bowed to Xiaolan. They knew Xiaolan and Xiaojun, the 2 wives of the monarch. Xiaolan nodded slightly as a return gesture. Yang Song then introduced the child in the arms of Xiaojun on the right hand side. "This is my eldest daughter Yang Yan." Xiaojun, like Xiaolan, stood up with the baby in her arms and smiled slightly, waiting for the ministers to greet her. "Your subjects greet the eldest princess and the second lady." Then at the party, the 2 babies received a lot of blessings without knowing what was going on. "Your subjects wish the eldest son good health and happiness, and the eldest princess good luck. Your subjects wish the eldest son extraordinary intelligence, and the eldest princess beautiful as a fairy." At the party, Yang Song's 2 children had completely become the protagonists of the banquet, but Yang Song didn't mind at all. Instead, he felt very happy. After the banquet, it was the new year, and the 6th year of Cheyenne Qi started with a big court meeting. In the council hall, the monarch and his subjects greeted each other and sat down. From the expressions of everyone, Yang Song knew that everyone must have good suggestions. "Everyone, the New Year holiday is over. I wonder if you have any suggestions on the system?" Yang Song knew that many ministers did not have a relaxing time during the New Year holiday, and the number of times they ran to the library increased significantly. Yang Song did not wait for the ministers to start making suggestions, and continued, "Before that, I would like to ask Mr. Liug to be my military advisor, to give me advice and wisdom." Yang Song turned around and stretched out his hand to Liu Bowen, who was sitting in the front row. "Thank you for your great kindness. I will do my best until my death." Liu Bowen immediately stood up and bowed to Yang Song to express his gratitude. Yang Song nodded, let Liu Bowen sit down, and continued, "I will throw out a brick to attract jade, and say a little first. Establish a military department, with the Command and Staff Bureau, the Rear Security Bureau, the Equipment Bureau, and the Political and Legal Bureau under the original Administrative Department, and then separate the Military Bureau under the former Administrative Department, and merge it into it. It will be directly under my command." Yang Song spoke to himself. He also knew that he could only think about military matters, and others dared not mention any ideas, even if they had any. The Logistics Bureau remains unchanged, with Yang Ren still serving as the director. He's responsible for logistics support such as food, ammunition, and medical care for the army. The Equipment Bureau is the former Military Industry Bureau. Luo Yi is the director. He's responsible for the manufacture and research and development of military industry and equipment. The Military Bureau was separated from the Administrative Department. Yang Xin is still the director. He's responsible for recruiting soldiers, training soldiers, and mobilizing militia. Yang Song first explained the changes in responsibilities and affiliations of the 3 original departments. The Command and Staff Bureau mainly performs the functions of pre-operation planning, commanding combat mobilization and logistics support, researching and formulating military strategies and military needs, organizing combat capability assessments, organizing and guiding joint training, combat readiness construction and daily combat readiness work. The Political and Legal Bureau is divided into 2 parts. One part is the military court, which is responsible for judging soldiers who violate military discipline and military law. The other part is propaganda and education, which is responsible for daily propaganda to soldiers, as well as education on loyalty to the emperor and patriotism, and cultural knowledge. After explaining the two new departments, Yang Song continued, the Command and Staff Bureau of the Military Department is headed by Li Jing, who is also the Deputy Director of the Military Department and manages the daily affairs of the Military Department on behalf of me. Yes, I obey your order. I will do my best to live up to your great grace. Li Jing clasped his fists and accepted the order with gratitude. This department was decided in a few words from Yang Song, and even the appointment of the person in charge was completed at the same time. There was no intention to let the ministers discuss and make suggestions. The supreme commander of the military department must be himself. It is not that others do not trust him, but that they cannot delegate military power. If Yang Song has a selected successor in the future, he will first grant him the full position of the military department and form a custom inheritance to implement it. Of course, these are all his tentative ideas, and they can be changed, if necessary in the future. He knows that, no matter how well the system is formulated, it is still implemented by people. Even if he plans and formulates everything perfectly now, he can't say what it will be like in the future. Your Majesty, I have something to say. Li Jing took over such a powerful position, and he was very grateful for Yang Song's trust in him, so he immediately put forward his own suggestions. Yang Song raised his hand and said, "Speak." "Yes, Your Majesty. I'm grateful to Your Majesty for your great grace, and I will be loyal to my duties." Li Jing clasped his fists and said yes, paused and said, "I have a little addition to the military department, established by Your Majesty. I think our country's military is still missing an important part, that is, the department and troops responsible for protecting the internal security of the country." Li Jing said everything without any reservation or delay. In addition, the military affairs of a country are extremely complicated, and the affairs are numerous. The daily affairs of the army should be divided separately. Otherwise, I can only deal with military affairs wholeheartedly, and have no time to formulate strategies and other affairs. Yang Song was shocked when he heard Li Jing's suggestion. He didn't expect that there would be such major mistakes and omissions in the military and the departments and troops that Li Jing suggested to protect the internal security of the country. Aren't they the armed police in the past? This should really be established. The current Xia people's morale is very high, so he even forgot that there is such a functional department. But it may not be in the future. Crime and breaking the law are inevitable. No matter when, there are always people who want to get something for nothing. Such a department can also stabilize the territory just occupied. If all professional soldiers go to patrol around, it would be a waste of talent. The most important thing is that this department solves the gap between the military and the people. It accepts the dual leadership of the local chief executive and the military chief, and is also another form of reserve. And the separate division of military affairs makes Yang Song feel something. In the past, the military affairs he handled had already been screened by the lower levels, and even this amount of military affairs almost made him too busy to handle, and sometimes he asked Chen Ping and Chang Sunsheng to help handle it. So Yang Song nodded in agreement, thinking that he was worthy of being a super famous historical talent, and the problems he mentioned were all the key points. Chapter 187 discussion continues. Pharmacist, what you said is very true. Let's do it as you say. Yang Song nodded in agreement. Then the two of them discussed the military system construction repeatedly several times, and finally Yang Song made the final decision on the military system. Military Department. The director is Yang Song himself. Exercise military power. Command and Staff Bureau. Li Jing is also the deputy director, mainly performing combat planning, command and control, and combat command support, researching and formulating military strategies and military needs, organizing combat capability assessments, organizing and guiding joint training, combat readiness construction, and daily combat readiness work. Military Affairs Bureau, Issue, responsible for military affairs, military rank promotion, military merit coordination, military merit, pensions, military registration and other affairs. Guard Army Bureau, Zhangwei, responsible for the command of the city and guard army, and protecting the internal security of the country. Military Bureau, Yangzin, responsible for recruiting soldiers, training soldiers, mobilizing militia and reserve forces. Equipment Bureau, LUOE, responsible for the equipment manufacturing, research and development of the army, and the management of the military industry. Rear Security Bureau, Yang Ren, responsible for the logistics support of the army's food and grass. Political and Legal Affairs Bureau, BOG, responsible for military court trials, cultural and ideological education of soldiers. Yes, during the discussion, the two of them also solved the heads of various departments. Because Hu Okubang and Liu Qi were to form a new brigade, and the guard brigade led by Zhang Wei was originally only suitable for defense, Yang Song went a step further and asked Zhang Wei to return to the rear of Xia State to be responsible for the establishment of the Guard Bureau. As for the establishment of the city guards under the Guard Bureau, it is also a brigade. As long as the weapons of the Guard Brigade are replaced, it can be implemented immediately. The replacement of weapons and equipment is necessary. The original Guard Brigade had crossbows and cannons. Now it is only to deal with some extremely vicious criminals, or missed northern barbarians, and these heavy weapons are not needed at all. The weapons and equipment of the city guards will be lightweight and mobile, which can not only save expenses, but also play the role of eliminating violence and protecting the good. Yushu played an important role in logistics, military affairs, and military merit statistics in the last war, and his performance made Yang Song deeply satisfied. So this time he was transferred to Xianqi City to serve as the director of the Military Affairs Bureau, which was equivalent to a promotion. Li Ji was originally an architect. In the past, there was no other way. There was too little talent, so he could only let a scholar serve as a manager of military manufacturing. Moreover, even in terms of architecture, most of them let Li Ji serve as an engineer or instructor, such as the construction of the central town and the altar, as well as the bridge outside the North City. Yang Song plans to let him return to the Dao Institute for research, which can be regarded as a return to his old profession. Moreover, he now has so much practical experience, which will definitely help his research. And Luo Yi is a military manufacturing expert among the 5,000 talents, who happens to be responsible for military industry. In fact, the fact that the weapons and equipment of the Xia Kingdom's army have not changed is related to the fact that Li Ji is not a professional. In the newly established military department, Li Jing's position as deputy director allowed Yang Song to grant him the rank of lieutenant general, and the director of the bureau level is equivalent to the rank of major general. In fact, the positions at the bureau level are a bit inconsistent with the ranks of lieutenant and major generals. Logically speaking, the corresponding position of lieutenant generals should at least reach the department level to match. But now the Xia Kingdom has not reached the administrative level of forming a ministry. There is only a department at the county level, not to mention the ministry at the central level, even the department at the state level. Xia Kingdom does not have it, because there is no administrative division of a state. So it can only be matched with high military ranks and low positions, which is also a last resort. With development, it will definitely change in the future. Of course, such a match only exists in the military system. The discussion just now was not only about the establishment of the military department, but also about the specific reform of the Xia Kingdom's army. The two also had a preliminary intention. In general, the military reform is to bring all the military departments together and separate them from other civilian departments. While increasing Yang Song's control over military power, it also reduces his handling of daily affairs. Your Majesty. After Yang Song and Li Jing finished their discussion, Yang Song was the first to stand up and make a suggestion. He said, I suggest that a new department be added under the administration department, to be responsible for culture, etiquette, and the rectification of customs. In addition, a new department should be added to be responsible for the real estate industry and mineral resources. I second it. Director Yang's suggestion is to make up for some of the shortcomings of the administration department. As a deputy, who had just arrived, Zhen Yu immediately stood up and agreed. I second it. The directors of the various bureaus under the administration department all seconded it. After Yang Song and others did not object or have new suggestions, they nodded and said, okay, then, let's follow this proposal. Add a new Wen bureau and a Z bureau under the administration department. The reason why he agreed so readily was that Zhen Yu also agreed, and he still believed in Zhen Yu's administrative wisdom. Another point is that this proposal was more in line with his expectations, and no one else objected. Your Majesty. Yang Zong stood up and bowed, saying, after several months of getting along, Mr. Zanyu's talents far surpass those of me, and most of the suggestions I made earlier were also due to Mr. Zanyu's contributions. Therefore, I'm willing to abdicate, and let Mr. Zanyu preside over the administration of Xia State. Yang Zong was still very honest. He did not take credit for the work that did not belong to him. This was his cleverness. He knew how much he had. Yang Song thought about it and agreed. Okay, you will come back to serve as the chief steward of my internal affairs department. Yes, your majesty. Yang Song accepted the order in confusion. Seeing Yang Song's puzzled look, Yang Song explained to Yang Song and all the ministers present. The internal affairs department is responsible for handling my personal property and coordinating the management of national honor. It is equivalent to my chief steward. I wonder if you are willing. He looked at Yang Zhang, who was getting excited as he was explained, and asked. Yang Zhang was unwilling to do so. This was his old profession. He used to be the chief steward of the Lord's mansion at that time. Originally, Yang Zhang thought that he would not be reduced to a commoner, but would serve as a minor official. He did not expect that the monarch valued him so much and let him take such an important position with high position, little power and small responsibility. Such a position can only be held by the monarch's confidant, which is the monarch's greatest trust in him. So Yang Zong bowed his head with gratitude and said, I thank the monarch for his great grace. I will repay the monarch's grace with my body, but if you need me, I will die. Well, good. Seeing Yang Zong so tactful, Yang Song nodded with satisfaction and turned to Zun Yu and ordered, Zun Yu, I appoint you as the director of the administrative department to manage the administrative affairs of Xia State. Zun Yu looked at the monarch's grace for a long time. Now it was his turn. He immediately said gratefully, thank you, my monarch. I will die for the country and live up to the monarch's grace. After a round of greetings and thanks, Zun Yu saw that Yang Song had been looking at him, which was obviously waiting for his next suggestion for promotion. Your Majesty, I suggest setting up a department to manage officials in the administrative hall. Zun Yu thought about it and made a suggestion, then explained, in the future, as the number of local departments increases, the number of officials will also increase. A department responsible for managing the promotion of officials should be added. Originally, after Zun Yu gave Yang Zong 2 suggestions, he only left this one for himself, but with a suggestion just now, his mind was opened, and he immediately thought of more areas that needed changes. Chapter 188 Administrative Reform. After Yang Song nodded in agreement, Zun Yu then suggested, I suggest establishing an administrative consultation system. He explained, when dealing with a major issue, all the directors under the administrative department will consult together, and after discussing the solution to the problem, the analysis of the effectiveness of the treatment, and the suggestions, they will report to the monarch, so that the ministers can share the worries of the monarch. Yang Song nodded secretly, which was equivalent to turning the group of people under the administrative department into his administrative secretariat, with only the right to make suggestions, but not the right to decide. Of course, in daily affairs, this system is not used for meetings and consultations. They can handle it themselves. Otherwise, what is the point of establishing such an administrative system? I suggest that the diplomatic power be incorporated into the administrative department. Chang Sunsheng stood up and suggested. When Yang Song heard this, he looked at Chang Sunsheng in surprise, waiting for his next words. Your Majesty, I have not had any foreign affairs to do in the past few years. What I have done most is to train foreign language talents and inspect the officials on behalf of the monarch. Chang Sunsheng bowed and explained to Yang Song. In my estimation, our country's diplomacy will be almost non-existent for a long time in the future, so I recommend myself to serve as the director of the Wen Bureau of the Administrative Office. Yang Song thought about it, and what Chang Sunsheng said was true. With the hostile relationship between Xia State and external forces, there was no need for diplomacy. It was good that there was no declaration of war. So Yang Song decided to merge the diplomatic post into the Wen Bureau, renamed it Rights, and appointed Chang Sunsheng as the deputy director of the administrative office and director of the Rights Bureau. This change did not count as a demotion of Chang Sunsheng. At most it was a half-level demotion, but the power was much greater than before. After Chang Sunsheng thanked the grace and sat down, after the minister's suggestions in turn, they discussed and considered them again and again, and finally decided on the administrative system after the reform. For the administrative discussion, most of the people present participated this time, unlike before, which was basically a double act between Yang Song and Li Jing. The final discussion on the administrative aspect was about the separation, merger, and addition of various functional departments. The Department of Foreign Affairs was definitely abolished and merged with the Department of Political Affairs, becoming the Bureau of Rights. The Bureau of Military Affairs was divided into the Department of Military Affairs. 3 new departments were added, namely the Bureau of Rights, the Bureau of Personnel and the Bureau of Resources. The functional departments under other administrative departments have only undergone some minor adjustments, as follows. Administrative Department. Directors on you exercises administrative power. Implement the administrative consultation system. Bureau of Rights. Chang Sunsheng is also the deputy director, responsible for diplomacy, etiquette, culture, rectification of customs and other cultural development aspects. Household Bureau. Wei Dong is responsible for civil affairs, household registration, population and other civil affairs. Health Bureau. Zhao Zhen is responsible for public security, inspections, arrests and other civil security disputes. Agricultural Bureau. Fang Qing is responsible for agricultural, forestry, fishery, animal husbandry and other industrial output. Commercial Bureau. Feng Di is responsible for business management, development and other commercial aspects. Personnel Bureau. Yuan Lin is responsible for the promotion and demotion of officials, performance appraisal, personal assessment and other appointments and demotions of middle and low-level officials. Post Bureau. Yuan Ke is responsible for water conservancy, transportation, post stations and other aspects. Industry Bureau. Zhang Yu, responsible for industry, engineering, infrastructure and other aspects. Resources Bureau. Zhu Xiaoak, responsible for geographic information, real estate, mineral resources management and development and other aspects. There are 9 bureaus in the administrative office, but this is how it is set up in the court where the monarch Yang Song is. If it is local administration, there are some differences. For example, in terms of culture, there is no diplomatic power, but there is half of the military command power of the city guards. After discussing the central administrative system, the next thing is the local administrative system. Your Majesty, I suggest adding a county level above the existing town level. Zhang Yu immediately suggested. He is now the chief minister of the administrative office, and he has the obligation to speak first. He explained. The country now has a population of more than 400,000 people, 1.5 cities, 9 towns, 2 passes, 2 large islands, and dozens of small islands and villages. The controlled land area is more than 2 million square kilometers, but the actual land in use is less than 10,000 square kilometers. Yang Song was very surprised when he heard these numbers. He had never calculated so carefully before. He had always calculated only the occupied land area, such as the 500,000 square kilometers of the coastal basin with 200,000 square kilometers of plains. He calculated it secretly. The starting point south of the Shianqian Pass, since the elimination and expulsion of the original natives in the south, the peninsula of nearly 2 million square kilometers has all belonged to him. Including the newly occupied coastal basin, Xiago really has more than 2 million square kilometers of land area. But he thought about the land that was fully utilized. According to 10 acres per person, in fact, no one can cultivate so much, that is, 0.00667 square kilometers per person. Even if calculated based on 500,000 people, there are only 3,335 square kilometers of land. Not only less than 10,000 square kilometers, but also less than half of this number. Zhang Yu's statement of less than 10,000 square kilometers was probably a rather euphemistic one, considering his predecessor and the monarch Yang Song. You wouldn't know until you counted it, but you'd be shocked when you counted it. During this period, he was only concerned with completing his mission and eliminating hostile forces. He never thought that the territory of Xia State was so large enough for steady development for decades. The ratio of the owned area to the utilized area is too large. Compared with the owned land, the utilized land can no longer be described as sparsely populated. It is just a drop in the ocean. It seems that Zhen Yu also went through a long-term statistical analysis of data when making his suggestions. Yang Song immediately looked at these great talents with a higher opinion. Of course, the actual utilized area is different from the area where the people are distributed. The Xia State that Yang Song saw earlier utilized an area of 100,000 square kilometers, which means that the people's activity range has reached 100,000 square kilometers. Of course, the islands are calculated separately, and the activity range of the army is not calculated. If these two things are counted, the land area of Xia State cannot be calculated. Zhen Yu didn't know that Yang Song had thought so much in such a short time. He continued to suggest, Your Majesty, I suggest that the distance between the towns be widened and dispersed, but not too far apart. Too far is not conducive to management, and too close is not conducive to future development. The Linhai Basin is about 1,000 kilometers long from east to west, and about 500 kilometers wide from north to south. The Linhai Plain in the basin is more than 500 kilometers long from east to west and more than 300 kilometers wide from north to south, and the distance between Shanhaiguan and Xianqianguan is only nearly 400 kilometers. In this range, there is not even a single citizen of Xia State. Zhen Yu then said a long list of data, which made some ministers who were not very sensitive to numbers dizzy, and Yang Song could only barely form a rough concept in his mind. Therefore, I suggest that Xia State reduce foreign wars in the future, develop existing land first, and at least develop the Linhai Plain and the Linhai Basin first to ensure stability in the north. After a long suggestion, Zhen Yu couldn't help but pick up the water cup on the table and drink 2 sips of water to moisten his throat that was about to smoke. Yang Song nodded secretly, thinking that he wanted to develop peacefully, but the enemy would not allow it. If it were not for the existence of the assassins who had held the enemy back during this period, the enemy might have gathered their forces. It seemed that he had to find a way to prevent the enemy from invading Xia again in a short period of time. Chapter 189 Living Room Meeting. It was because of the assassins that Yang Song dared to carry out reforms at this time. Otherwise, just preparing for war would consume a lot of energy, so there would be no time to carry out reforms. However, the assassination strategy is not a long-term solution after all, and the enemy seems to have a reason to send troops, so Yang Song and his men can only find a way to delay time. One day is one day, and it would be best if it is delayed until the end, when the enemy has no intention of sending troops. Suddenly, Yang Song remembered the 7 lords and many dignitaries captured by D King and his men. If used properly, these people might be able to buy some time for the Xia Kingdom. When it's not that I want to start a war, but that the enemy does not allow the Xia Kingdom to develop steadily. As long as the enemy does not invade, I will not pay attention to them. Yang Song explained to Zhen Yu. Yes, I know. Zhen Yu bowed his hands and said that he only looked at the problem from the perspective of the development of the Xia Kingdom. He only put forward his own suggestions, and the rest depends on the decision of the monarch. The military and administrative aspects have been discussed. Seeing that it was getting late, Yang Song said, let's stop here today and continue tomorrow. Everyone go back and think carefully to see if there is anything missing. After everyone dispersed, Yang Song kept several important talents such as Li Jing, Liug, Chen Ping, Zhang Zhesheng, and Yang Li. All the great talents, please have dinner with me. I have something to discuss with you later. Yang Song invited them. We thank you, Your Majesty. Several people agreed to thank him. After dinner, in the living room on the first floor of the monarch's mansion, Yang Song and everyone sat down according to their priorities. Yang Song picked up the teacup and took a sip of tea and said, today, the military department and the administrative department have already had their charters. I wonder what you think of other departments. I think that other departments should also be organized according to this method. Liu Bowen was the first to speak up and suggested. Yang Song looked at Liu Bowen and motioned him to continue. Bowen, tell me in detail. Yes. Liu Bowen bowed and accepted the order. The military department has brought all military departments together and subordinated various functional departments with clear division of labor and centralized unity. Therefore, I suggest that some similar departments can also be formed together. Liu Bowen said slowly. For example, the two departments of education and technology, which are closely related, can be combined into a science and education department. Yang Song said, this is also the reason why you propose to separate the medical bureau from the administrative department. Your Majesty is wise. Liu Bowen complimented and continued, medical care, technology, and education all have one thing in common, that is, they are technical and knowledge based, that is, most of them belong to the academic field. I wonder if what I said is right. Liu Bowen said, and asked Zhuzi, Shen Kuo and Li Shizhen. What Liu Junshi said is very true. Science and education complement each other. Science and technology need top talents to promote them, and top talents also need to be educated and trained. Zhuzi touched his beard and nodded in agreement. Shen Kuo nodded frequently and said in a tone of agreement, that could not be agreed more. My research institute is very short of talents. Even the excellent boys and girls who graduated from middle school can only do odd jobs. I originally hoped that Your Majesty would increase investment in education. Since the arrival of 5,000 talents in Xia State, the researchers of the Research Institute are finally not alone. With competent assistance, they can finally devote themselves to research without having to do everything themselves. Li Shizhen frowned and listened to the conversation of several people. At this time, he also replied, Your Majesty, I'm just a doctor and don't understand official affairs, but I know that medical skills, medical equipment, methods, etc. also need to be carefully studied and summed up experience. Oh. According to Bowen, it is recommended to put science and technology, education and medical care into a large department. Yang Song asked Liu Bowen, after listening to the speeches of several people. Liu Bowen immediately bowed and replied, yes, Your Majesty, this is exactly what I meant. But it's hard to determine who is in charge. After saying that, he looked at Shen Kuo and the other two, and saw that they waved their hands repeatedly, indicating that they could not manage so many daily affairs. They still wanted to stay in their own fields, and did not want to be delayed by these complicated affairs. Even Zhuzi, who had a certain official ambition, did not want to do such large-scale affairs, and he would not manage daily affairs. Yang Song was also embarrassed when he saw the attitudes of several people. Such management affairs should be done by the administration, but this would give the administrative office too much power, otherwise Liu Bowen would not have proposed to set up a separate department. He looked at Liu Bowen's calm and relaxed look, and couldn't help asking, look, sir, you have a solution, right? Haha. Your Majesty is really a sharp eye. Yes, I have a suggestion. I hope Your Majesty will not blame me. Liu Bowen touched the beard on his chin and laughed. Since the three gentlemen are unwilling to manage this department, why not add a department that can manage it? But such a department does not need to be set up separately, as long as there is a team. Yang Song frowned and listened to Liu Bowen's method, but still did not quite understand it, so he said bluntly, sir, just tell me what this department is like. Liu Bowen bowed and accepted the order. Yes, I obey your order. This department is called the Council Affairs Office, which has 4 departments and colleges under its jurisdiction. Imperial College, Science and Technology College, Imperial Hospital, and Zhuanzheng College. The Zhuanzheng College is responsible for managing affairs. Yang Song finally understood that Liu Bowen had just told him not to blame him, and it turned out that he was waiting for him here. Imperial College is the original Education Bureau. Science and Technology College is the original Science and Technology Bureau. Imperial Hospital should be the Medical Bureau separated from the Administrative Office. And Zhuanzheng College is the Propaganda Bureau that Yang Song attaches great importance to. He did not expect Liu Bowen to merge the department responsible for propaganda into the courtyard hall, but Yang Song thought about it carefully and knew his intention. At this time, Liu Bowen's explanation followed. Your Majesty, I merge the Propaganda Bureau into a department responsible for academic affairs. In addition to letting it manage on behalf of others, the other purpose is to review teaching materials, manage information, and prevent things that should not appear from entering this department. Liu Bowen's serious voice resounded throughout the living room. Such careful consideration can be said to be looking forward to thousands of years later. His wisdom made Yang Song admire him very much. This is a suggestion related to the foundation of Zai's rule. Yang Song knows the term information control, but such an advanced concept is not something that people of this era can understand. And this suggestion is to make the education system have knowledge of loyalty to the emperor and patriotism, and there must be no lax and rebellious thoughts. On the other hand, the research content of technology and the progress of medicine must be controlled to prevent the occurrence of evil scientists and evil human experiments, of course, except for those agreed by Yang Song. Yang Song nodded in agreement and said, "Just do as Bowen said." Then he instructed Yang Li, "You have also heard what Liu Junshi said. This is a major event related to the future of Zaya State. I will entrust this important task to you." "Yes, I obey your order. I will not fail your trust." Yang Li stood up and bowed his hands to solemnly accept the order. Yang Song nodded and said, "But you must not interfere with the research and plans of various departments. You are only responsible for review and supervision, not direct interference. Remember to report anything you find at any time." "Yes, I have noted it," Yang Li replied seriously. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 190, Comprehensive Reform. In fact, following Liu and Liu Bowen's suggestions, he also thought of an aspect, that is, sports involving the people's health. But he also knew that, even if a department responsible for sports was set up now, it would be a joke. There is no need to encourage people to exercise in this era. This is not the era of sub-health in the world before. I'm so tired all day, and I exercise all day. Do I still need the government to encourage everyone to exercise? Isn't this a joke for the people? So Yang Song thought about it and didn't say it. If there is a need in the future, just add a new department under the courtyard. Court. Yang Li is responsible for affairs management. Imperial College, ZHUZ, responsible for the library, school establishment, course opening, and textbook compilation. Science and Technology Academy, Shenkuo, responsible for the Research Institute. Researcher, mathematician, Kinjiasheo, agronomist, Chenyu, astronomer, Yang Zanfu, architect, Li Ji. Imperial Hospital, Li Shizun, responsible for medical treatment, hygiene, and epidemic prevention. Zuanzhengyuan, Yang Li, responsible for court reports and propaganda. After the matters of the court and the office were finalized, the other departments were discussed. Your Majesty, Chen Ping stood up and suggested, "I suggest that the intelligence department be divided into two parts, internal and external, so that their respective responsibilities can be distinguished." After Chen Ping's suggestion was confirmed by Yang Song and Liu, the intelligence department was also changed again. In the new intelligence department, two divisions were clearly made. One is the National Security Bureau, which is responsible for domestic intelligence, and Yang Yi will continue to be in charge. The other is the Field Affairs Bureau, which is responsible for external forces intelligence work, and is still in charge of Chen Ping. Of course, Chen Ping also serves as the director of the department. In fact, there is no difference from the past, except that the functions are clarified, and the system is clarified. Intelligence Department, Chen Ping is the principal, and Yang Yi is the deputy. Field Affairs Bureau, Chen Ping is responsible for foreign intelligence collection, spy training and dispatch, assassination, subversion, etc. National Security Bureau, Yang Yi is responsible for domestic intelligence collection, information confidentiality, and counter-espionage. In this way, the responsibilities of each intelligence department are clearer and clearer at a glance. After the intelligence department agreed, everyone agreed on the establishment plan of the Department of Justice and the Department of Finance and Taxation. The Department of Justice is also divided into two parts. One is the Trial Bureau, which is responsible for trials, and the other is the Supervision Bureau, which is responsible for supervision and inspection. Song Si and Bao Zheng serve as the principal and deputy of the Department of Justice respectively. Department of Justice, Song Si is the principal and Bao Zheng is the deputy. Trial Bureau, Bao Zheng, trial power, responsible for court trials, judicial notarization, and lawyer management. Inspection Bureau, Song Si, supervision power, responsible for admonition, impeachment, supervision, questioning, and inspection. Of course, the Department of Justice also has a very important function, which is to propose specific legislation. The same is true for the Department of Finance, which is divided into two parts, the Finance Bureau and the Taxation Bureau. As the name suggests, the Finance Bureau is responsible for the country's financial affairs, and the Taxation Bureau is responsible for collecting taxes. Of course, the specific work content must be detailed and complicated, not as simple as two words. Department of Finance and Taxation, Zhang Zhuzheng is the principal and Qian Liang is the deputy. Taxation Bureau, Zhang Zhuzheng is responsible for taxation, tax formulation, tax increases and decreases, etc. Finance Bureau, Qian Liang, responsible for money houses, currency issuance, salaries, etc. In this way, the determination of financial and taxation has completed another piece of the puzzle for the Xia Kingdom's system. Military, administration, justice, finance and taxation, intelligence, science, education, and medicine, plus the Ministry of Internal Affairs, that Yang Zhang is now in charge of. There are not many remaining aspects. In fact, the Ministry of Internal Affairs can be regarded as Yang Song's own private affairs, but the so-called royal family has no trivial matters, which makes the private affairs of this monarch also become state affairs. Now, Liu and Li Jing saw that the political system had been discussed almost, and jointly suggested, Your Majesty, I dare to suggest that your guard should also make some changes. Oh, my guards only have one battalion, what needs to be changed? Yang Song asked curiously, but he was not disgusted or angry because the two interfered with his private army. Li Jing was the first to reply, Your Majesty, after several months of investigation, I found that Your Majesty sent his guards to other armies, to serve as military police, to monitor military morale and discipline. Liu Bowen continued, so we suggest that Your Majesty's guards form an army specifically responsible for monitoring military morale and discipline. And according to Your Majesty's guards are also an army responsible for strategic support. Li Jing said. Therefore, we suggest that Your Majesty form another army specifically responsible for strategic support. Liu Bowen also continued to suggest. Yang Song listened to the two people's words one by one, and he understood their painstaking efforts. They were afraid that one person's advice would not be enough, so they joined forces to give advice. It seems that the two of them have been in contact privately. He thought about it, and thought that it should be so. The soldiers of a battalion of the guards are responsible for protecting his safety, guarding Xianqi City, and taking on the responsibilities of military police and strategic support forces. It's really not good. So Yang Song agreed with their suggestions and asked, Pharmacist, Bowen, what do you think about how to set up my guards? I suggest that the guards be divided into two, establishing the Imperial Guards and the military police, and each expanding to a battalion. Li Jing, as the head of the military department, immediately suggested. Yang Song frowned and thought carefully, and after a while he said, then divide it into two parts. The Imperial Guards will be responsible for guarding Xianqi City, and serving as a strategic support army. After speaking, he looked at everyone, and saw that everyone was quietly waiting for his speech, and continued, forget about the military police, re-establish the Jinai Wei, and be responsible for guarding me, while also serving as the military police. When Yang Song said this, he thought of the word Jinai and suddenly remembered a very dazzling existence, the honor guard. By the way, the Jinai Wei will also serve as the honor guard. Yang Song immediately added. For the time being, the expansion of these two armies will be as you said, and each will be expanded to the size of a battalion. The two looked at each other, bowed and saluted, saying, Your Majesty is wise. Imperial Guard, led by Zhao Wu, responsible for guarding Xianqi City and serving as a strategic support army. Jinai Wei, led by Wang Wei, responsible for the monarch's guards, the Guard of Honor, and also the military police. As for the leaders of the two armies, Zhao Wu and Wang Wei will be in charge respectively. Anyway, both of them have experience in this area, but they are good at different directions. Zhao Wu was originally the leader of his Imperial Guards. Because he was good at combat command, Yang Song asked him to be the leader of the newly formed Imperial Guards. Wang Wei was the deputy commander of the Imperial Guards. He was more cautious, and he was also serious and responsible in doing things. Therefore, Yang Song asked him to be the leader of the newly established Jinai Wei. The Imperial Guards guarded Xianqi City, because Xianqi City was the capital of the Xia Kingdom, and other places were guarded by the city guards. The Strategic Support Army is a support army that will be deployed only when a war at the strategic and campaign level occurs. It will not be easily deployed at ordinary times. It is precisely because of the characteristics of the Strategic Support Army that the elite of this army is the strongest in the entire army, and the good equipment is also the first to be equipped, so that it can play a decisive role after it is put into battle. Jinai Wei is the name given by Yang Song after he was interested. However, unlike the previous world, it is no longer a spy agency that monitors all officials, but a military police that monitors military morale and military discipline. The army is as its name suggests, and the clothes of this army must be gorgeous in Yang Song's setting. Because Jinai Wei represents his monarch, those who are rigorous, self-disciplined, and have good conduct must be selected. Only such people can take on such an important responsibility. Even in Yang Song's vision, the duties of the military police will be separated from it in the future, but there is no need for this now. He wants to make this army a synonym for honor. In this way, Jinai Wei will become the goal that all powerful officials and noble heirs work hard and yearn for in the future. With this goal, these second generations will work hard to move forward and will not make the people resentful for trivial matters. He learned this trick from the movies and TV shows in the past. Don't underestimate the temptation of honor to these people. This move can be said to kill many birds with one stone. It can not only provide a way out for the descendants of the powerful, but also prevent the second generation from doing evil, and cultivate excellent talents for the Xia Kingdom. Now Yang Song can control the current situation, but his descendants in the future may not be certain, and he also needs to make some considerations and plans for the future. Of course, it is still too early to be true now. Even his offspring are not even 1 year old, so this is just an idea of Yang Song. Chapter 191 Administrative Divisions. Yang Song found that gathering a small number of outstanding people for discussion was much more effective than a large court meeting. If he hadn't known that the court meeting had its own role, he would have thought of not holding a court meeting and directly discussing with these great talents. But Yang Song knew that this was impossible because the court meeting also had the function of legislative power. In addition to legislative power, large and small court meetings were also a place to discuss national affairs, and the implementation and execution of various decisions had to be determined through court meetings. So after Yang Song sighed in his heart, he continued to discuss with everyone. Yang Song said, "Since we are going to establish an administrative level at the county level, how should we divide the scope of each county? Your Majesty, because of your foresight, all the towns in Xia State are a certain distance apart, and there are too many open spaces in between that can be developed and utilized." Zhenyu immediately suggested, and by the way, praised Yang Song's wisdom in establishing the town before. Zhenyu continued, "So at this time, we only need to determine the scope of each county. The establishment of a county is very simple and convenient. But before dividing the districts, I suggest that we first determine the local administrative and political system." Zhenyu bowed to Yang Song and sat down to wait for Yang Song's decision. Yang Song agreed with Zhenyu's suggestion very much, because today, the reforms of many aspects such as the administrative office have been determined, so it is natural that the local administrative system must also be changed. "When are you? Do you have any suggestions?" Yang Song asked immediately. According to his estimation, Zhenyu made this suggestion after he had a draft in mind. Sun Yu replied, I think that in addition to the diplomatic powers, the administrative departments at the county level can be set up in accordance with the functional departments of the administrative office. Yang Song nodded, agreeing with Sun Yu's statement, because the diplomatic post can only be set up at the central level. Therefore, I think we can change Li to Wen, which is responsible for etiquette, culture, and the rectification of customs. Sun Yu continued his suggestion. This is set up at the county level. At the town level, I think the Li who is responsible for managing officials can be abolished in terms of administration. The management of officials is at the central level, and the management of clerks is carried out at the county level and reported to the central government. Sun Yu sat down and said no more. As for the establishment of other departments at the county level, it was not for him to interrupt. He was only responsible for administrative issues. Too much would lead to mistakes. Officials are officials, and clerks are clerks. This is the system proposed by Yang Song in the past. Now that Sun Yu has improved and supplemented it, it is clearer. Do you have any suggestions for other aspects? Yang Song asked, looking at others. When Yang Song asked others, he was also thinking about how his direct department should be set up at the local level. He probably had an idea, and now he asked to seek other people's opinions to improve his idea. Your Majesty, my suggestion on setting up other departments at the local level is the same as that of directors and you. Liu Bowen is now the monarch's military advisor. If the monarch asks, he must answer. Liu Bowen continued, the 4 departments of justice, finance and taxation, court affairs, and national security are established in sequence. However, I suggest that the inspection and trial should be separated at the local level. Trial is responsible for judicial trials. The inspection is not only responsible for judicial supervision and inspection, but also for the supervision and inspection of local officials. Therefore, the distinction between the two is also to better ensure the complementarity of the system. Yang Song agreed with Liu Bowen's suggestion. The trial should focus on the law and not bring other things into it. At the town level, the establishment of these 4 items is equivalent to that of the county, but the level is 1 level lower. After Liu Bowen finished his suggestion, he saluted Yang Song and sat down. Yang Song listened to Liu Bowen's suggestion. Seeing that no one else spoke out, he summarized and sorted out his own ideas and finally determined the structure of the local political system at the county and town levels. County level, set up county magistrates and various directors. The county magistrate is responsible for administrative management, including the bureaus of literature, agriculture, industry, commerce, health, personnel, post station, household, and capital. The inspection bureau, responsible for the supervision and inspection of the county. The county court, responsible for judicial trials, judicial notarization, and lawyer management in the county. The Court Affairs Bureau, responsible for science and technology, education, healthcare, and information in the county. The Finance and Taxation Bureau, responsible for fiscal and taxation in the county. The National Security Bureau, responsible for intelligence collection, information confidentiality, and counter-espionage in the county. Town level, there are town mayors and directors of various offices. The town mayor is responsible for administrative management, including the bureaus of literature, agriculture, industry, commerce, health, post station, household, and capital. The inspection bureau, responsible for the supervision and inspection of the town. The town court, responsible for judicial trials, judicial notarization, and lawyer management in the town. The Court Affairs Office, responsible for science and technology, education, healthcare, and information in the town. The Finance and Taxation Office, responsible for fiscal and taxation in the town. The National Security Office, responsible for intelligence collection, information confidentiality, and counter-espionage in the town. Among them, Yang Song directly changed the name of the trial department to the court, and no longer named it with the word trial, because these 2 words do not sound so friendly to the people. Although the trial bureau and other departments established by the central government are also bureaus, they belong to central official positions, and are naturally 1 level higher than local institutions. This is also the reason why Yang Song did not raise the administrative level of the central government. This is already 1 level higher. If it is raised one level to establish it, then there will be one level vacant in the middle. Besides, the relationship between the central and local governments is not just the difference in job levels. The town level is office and the county level is bureau. The job level of the county magistrate is equivalent to the deputy director, and the job level of the town mayor is equivalent to the deputy director. Because if you are not half a level higher, you can't manage the directors and directors of the subordinate administrative departments. Other non-administrative departments are not managed by the mayor and county magistrate, but are directly governed by the superior department, but they can cooperate on certain issues. For example, when building a school, the education department must communicate and negotiate with the administrative department. When when the local system has been established, so how should the administrative divisions be divided? Yang Song asked the two about the establishment of counties. Towns are already in place, but how to determine the newly added county level is still under discussion. I suggest that at least 3 counties should be established throughout the country. Zanu stood up again and suggested, there are no people living outside the Cheyenne Pass, so I will first talk about the division within the Cheyenne Pass. Okay, tell me in detail. Yang Song agreed. Zanu agreed and said, yes, your majesty. With Cheyenne City as the center, a county will be built in the north with the 3 towns of Central Town, Shangdao Town and Xiadao Town. A county can also be built with the 3 towns of Linkei Town, Annan Town and Mushao Town in the southwest. Then establish a county with the 3 towns of Cheyenne City, Industrial Town, Navy Town and Gufeng Town. The Filong Island, Fugi Island and other small islands overseas are all inhabited by indigenous slaves, and cannot be included in the political divisions. Similarly, the Cheyenne Pass and Shanhaiguan Pass, the 2 passes standing on 2 mountain ranges, are military facilities, and cannot be included in the political divisions. Zanu expressed all his ideas about administrative divisions. As for why the division was made in this way, it was of course, based on geographical location. Everyone knew it without Zanu's explanation. Director Zanu has explained it in such detail and clearly, I will not make any more suggestions. Liu Bo stood up and bowed to Yang Song, saying, I will talk about the coastal basin outside the Cheyenne Pass. I suggest that the immigration development of the coastal basin needs to be gradual, and the land near the Cheyenne Pass should be developed first. I estimated that the land of the 4 former BIE lords near the Cheyenne Pass can meet the labor and life of at least 1 million people. Yes, the land of the 4 small lords added up to nearly 50,000 square kilometers, and even the land of the nearest former Beer territory has 8,000 to 9,000 square kilometers. With this 8,000 to 9,000 square kilometers of land, according to the standard of 10 mu of land per person, it can accommodate more than 1.3 million people of the Xia Kingdom. Chapter 192 Xiaguo County Town. And now the total population of Xia State is less than 500,000. With this calculation, if the Linhai Basin is to be fully developed and utilized, at least 30 million people are needed. It is really a long way to go. As for the development of the Linhai Basin by the people in the original world, there is only a little bit of development of the Linhai Basin, and there are a lot of undeveloped unowned lands between the territories. Otherwise, there would not be only more than 1 million locals, nor would it recover so quickly during the famine, nor would it be so easily captured by Xia State. Yang Song really wanted to open the brains of the lords of this world to see, with such a large territory, but can only feed so few people, what are these lords thinking? Really a waste. Yang Song secretly cursed these lords and nobles who were imprisoned by him in the cell. From what Bo said, is it time to build a town in the Linhai Basin? Yang Song asked Liu Bo puzzledly. Liu Bo smiled and shook his head gently, saying, no, what I suggest is to build a town on the ruins of the cities in the original 4 territories to form a county. Seeing that everyone, including Yang Song, was confused, Liu Bo explained, what I mean is to migrate to these 4 towns at the same time, no matter how many people there are, just set up the framework first. And according to my estimation, in a few years, these 4 places will reach the level of the current towns in Xia State. Although there are still vast areas and sparsely populated, at least these places are utilized, and there is enough room for future development. After listening to Liu Bowen's words, Yang Song's eyes suddenly became clear, and the doubts that existed disappeared. To put it bluntly, Liu Bowen's suggestion for the development of the coastal basin is a replica of the previous development of Xia State, and it is faster, simpler and more convenient, because there are already successful examples. I agree very much with Liu Junsh's suggestion. The current development of Xia State is carried out in this way, and there is a lot of room for future development. Zanu seconded. Yang Song confirmed. Okay, let's divide it according to Liu and Bowen's suggestions. By the way, have the names of these 4 counties been determined? Yang Song remembered that the names of the 4 counties have not been determined yet. After hearing this question, everyone bowed and said in unison, "Please give us names, Your Majesty." Yang Song felt a headache when he heard that he was asked to name the counties again, but he really couldn't shirk this obligation to name them, so he had to rub his forehead and rack his brains to think of a name. After a while, Yang Song really couldn't think of a good name, so he had to say, the county established by 4 towns outside the Xianqian Pass is called Sealing County, and the names of the towns are Nanguan Town, Dongbao Town, Ziling Town, Tongbui Town. The name of this Sealing County is easy to understand. Isn't it the county with 4 territories and lords? He is taking advantage and still wanting to whip the corpse. Nanguan Town is the original beer city. To the south is the Xianqian Pass, so it is named Nanguan Town. This is Yang Song explaining to everyone why he named it this way. Dongbao Town and Xiling Town are towns with a castle in the east and a territory in the west, and Tongbui Town is a town connected to the north. This naming method is really convenient. This is what everyone wants. As for the names of the 3 counties south of the Xianqian Pass, Yang Song looked at the ministers a little uncertainly before continuing. The county where Xianqi City is located is called Xianqi County. The county consisting of 3 towns in the southwest is called Zinan County, and the county consisting of 3 towns in the northern passage is called Anton County. Yang Song continued to explain. The river in the south that flows out of the Xiling forest and flows to the southern wilderness is called the Hui River, so this county is called Hunan County. And Tang County means peace, tranquility, and a safe residence. It is also in the passage, so it is named Anton County, and the combination means a county with a smooth and peaceful residence. After naming and explaining, Yang Song took a long breath, picked up the teacup, and drank a sip of tea to moisten his slightly dry throat. Your Majesty is wise, and I admire you. Everyone stood up and bowed. Yang Song saw that everyone accepted this name, and regardless of whether these flatteries came from their hearts, he took it as everyone really agreed with this name. In addition to these places where people live, Xia State also has Xianqian Pass, Shanhaiguan Pass, Filong Island, Fugi Island and many small islands, all of which are directly under the central government. Seeing that the discussion was almost over, and it was already midnight, Yang Song said, "Let's stop here tonight. We will continue the meeting tomorrow morning. Everyone should go back and rest early. Thank you for your hard work. I'm bothering you to discuss with me so late. Your Majesty, please trouble me. It is a duty to share your worries." "Why should I trouble you?" Liu Bowen said in panic. Others also said I dare not and I should. The court meeting on the second day was a continuation of the previous day. It had never happened before that there were 2 consecutive days of court meetings. But today's court meeting was a little different from yesterday's. It was no longer necessary to discuss various matters at the court meeting. Instead, Liu Bowen read out the resolutions that had been discussed and determined for the ministers on behalf of Yang Song. After Liu Bowen finished reading the resolution to all the ministers, Yang Song asked, "Do you have any objections to this resolution?" This question was simply unnecessary. It was already a resolution, so who would dare to object? But Yang Song wanted to demonstrate the spirit of the meeting. He still had to take the lead in going through the procedures. Moreover, even if there were people who disagreed, he really wanted to hear what the disagreement was. Maybe there were really omissions. As a result, of course, there was no objection. Since no one has any objection, let's implement this resolution. Yang Song immediately gave a serious order. I order Zhen Yu to serve as the director of the administrative office, and Chang Sun Sheng to serve as the deputy director of the administrative office, responsible for managing the administration of the Xia state. I obey your order. Zhen Yu accepted the order solemnly. Order Li Jing to serve as the deputy director of the military department. Order Chen Ping to serve as the director of the intelligence department, and concurrently as the director of the field affairs bureau. Order Yang Li to serve as the deputy director of the intelligence department, and concurrently as the director of the national security bureau. Order Yang Li to serve as the director of the office of the academy. What was agreed upon last night was only an agreement, and has not been officially announced. Now Yang Song officially issued the appointment letter according to the agreed positions and personnel. After the appointment, the ministers present also changed their positions, commonly known as changing seats. Liu and Zhen Yu sat in the first row on Yang Song's left. Behind Zhen Yu was Chang Sun Sheng, the deputy director. The people in the back rows were from the administrative department. The administrative department had 9 departments, and the chief and deputy positions occupied a lot of positions. Li Jing and Yang Zong sat in the first row on the right. Although Li Jing was a deputy, his status was very high. He was in charge of military power. Similarly, although Yang Zong was only a general manager of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, he was behind the monarch Yang Song. Officials such as intelligence and finance also sat on Yang Song's right, and sat back in order according to their status, functions, and qualifications. After changing seats, they all got familiar with their new superiors and new colleagues. Seeing that the meeting could not continue, Yang Song said, "Let's adjourn the meeting. Get familiar with your new positions and new responsibilities after you leave." Chapter 193 Tax Reform. After a month of implementing the agreed resolution, all ministers and officials adapted to their respective affiliations. There was basically no change in the personnel of this reform, and the responsibilities did not change much, otherwise it would not have taken only 1 month to be fully implemented. The only change was the overall framework. The division of functions and responsibilities became more obvious, and several departments were added. The head of the administrative office was changed, a military bureau was separated, and a new bureau of personnel and a bureau of resources were added. As long as the changes in these major departments were not big, it would have no impact on the people. The biggest change was in the military aspect. The establishment of the military office, the integration of the 2 departments, and the establishment of 2 new functional departments can be said to have been changed from beginning to end. The Office of the Court Affairs was a large department that was integrated from the existing departments. Although it was newly established, there was not much change, just a collection. The other 2 large departments were just integrated or separated on the original basis, and there was not much change. In short, after a month, officials of all sizes knew what they should do. That day, Zhang Zhuzheng met with Yang Song and said, "Your Majesty, I have some ideas about taxation and tax types." "Taxes? Tax types? Uncle, tell me." Yang Song put down the book in his hand and listened attentively. Zhang Zhuzheng bowed and said, "Yes, Your Majesty. At present, the taxation of Xia state is very low. There are only 3 types of taxes: agricultural tax, commercial tax, and industrial engineering tax. It is very imperfect, which has led to the fact that Xia state's finances have always been in a deficit state." Yang Song asked in confusion, "What does uncle mean?" "Your Majesty, this is what I wrote about tax reform." Zhang Zhuzheng handed Yang Song a thick bound book with both hands. It was obvious that it was bound by many sheets of paper. Yang Song looked at such a thick book and said with a headache, "Tell me about the tax policy you formulated." "Yes." Zhang Zhuzheng bowed and said, "I have read a lot of information on taxation during this period of time, and finally formulated 8 major tax categories: agricultural tax, value-added tax, transaction tax, resource tax, property tax, contract tax, income tax, business tax." Zhang Zhuzheng listed these 8 types of taxes one by one. He explained, agricultural taxes still in accordance with the previous regulations. On the basis of 1/10 of the tax, appropriate increases and decreases will be made according to the types of planting, raising, and breeding, the quality of the fields, whether there is a disaster, etc. The method of collection can be either currency or in kind. This is the most important tax in Xia state. Zhang Zhuzhang didn't need to say much about this. Yang Song also knew the importance of agricultural tax to Xia state. The population growth depends entirely on this tax. Value-added tax is a tax levied on the added value of industrial production, product processing, engineering, construction, etc. Whether it is the smelting of iron ore, the processing of rice, or the construction of houses, all are subject to tax. Zhang Zhuzhang was afraid that Yang Song would not understand, so he gave an example. Your Majesty, let me use the smelting of iron, or as a simple example. For example, the value of 1 ton of iron, ore is 100 taels, but after smelting in a steel furnace, it becomes 800 kilograms of fine steel worth 300 taels. There is a value-added process between the 300 taels and the 100 taels, and the value-added tax is a tax on the 200 taels of added value. After hearing Zhang Zhuzhang's example, Yang Song instantly understood what value-added tax was. Of course, he also knew that it was not that simple to collect taxes in practice. At least in this example, the cost was not included in the value added. Zhang Zhuzhang waited for Yang Song to nod his head and then introduced. Transaction tax is a tax imposed on the purchase, lease, and circulation of goods. It is an important type of commercial tax. I will use the example of that ton of iron ore to illustrate. Zhang Zhuzhang explained with the same example. The smelter spent 100 taels to purchase this ton of iron ore from the mine, and I will collect 100 taels of transaction tax. After the smelter sells 800 kilograms of refined steel to the market for 300 taels, I will collect another transaction tax. As long as there is a transaction, I will collect transaction tax. Yang Song easily understood this transaction tax because he was very familiar with this tax, so he also knew that transaction tax was an important tax in places with developed commerce. However, the current business behavior of Xia state is still the most basic ones, such as buying low and selling high, buying in the north and selling in the south, and there is no complicated model, so there is not much transaction tax to be collected. Resource tax is a tax levied on various resources such as mining, land use, and fishing in rivers, lakes, and seas. This tax will also be an important source of fiscal revenue for the Xia kingdom in the future. When Zhang Zhuzhang talked about this tax, he looked at Yang Song with bad intentions. Because the mining of the Xia kingdom basically belongs to Yang Song's industry. Among so many tax types, many of them are actually taking money from the hands of Yang Song, the monarch, and turning private into public in disguise. Mining, industrial output, engineering, construction, and other industries. Yang Song's industry has a monopoly position. But there is no way who says that the whole world belongs to him. So Zhang Zhuzhang had to solve the government's financial problems from the aspect of the types of taxes. He used a dignified reason, which was to make Yang Song, the monarch, unable to refuse. In fact, it was not that Yang Song was greedy for money, but that he could not think of so much. In fact, there has been no talented person who can advise him. Otherwise, how can we say that these great talents are the engine that supports the development of the Xia kingdom? Ordinary people are just fuel. Property tax is a tax levied on personal property such as vehicles, houses, and currency. It is generally levied once a year. In my design, the collection of property tax is divided into several levels. For the first level property tax, personal property with a total value of less than 100 taels is not taxed. For the second level property tax, personal property with a total value of more than 100 taels to 200 taels is taxed at 1%. 200 taels to 400 taels is taxed at 2%, and 400 taels to 800 taels is taxed at 3%. It goes up to 50%. Yang Song agreed with this collection standard. The purpose of this property tax is to redistribute the total social property. In simple terms, the richer the person, the more property tax will be levied. Contract tax is a tax levied on contracts, deeds, notarizations, and other documents. The government will not recognize any contract that has not been taxed. Zhang Zhuzhang continued to explain, contract tax is actually a guarantee for private transactions by the government, and the party that fails to fulfill the contract will be held legally responsible. It is an important guarantee for the normal development of society. Income tax is divided into personal income tax and group income tax. Groups are levied according to registered capital and profits. As for the collection of personal income tax, I have also divided it into several levels, with the starting point being 5 taels. No tax will be levied below 5 taels, and 1% will be levied between 5 taels and 10 taels. Business tax is divided into individual business tax and group business tax. Individuals are levied according to invoices, groups are levied according to financial books. Listening to Zhang Zhuzheng's explanation of tax reform, Yang Song also realized that the slow development in the past was not caused by one or two reasons, and the financial aspect is indeed the most important reason. If the tax is levied according to the current tax standard, I don't know how many times richer the finance will be than it is now. Although according to this tax standard, except for agricultural tax, most of the other taxes are levied on his industry, but in the end Yang Song agreed to this plan. Anyway, most of his personal property has been used for the development of Zha State, which has won him a lot of praise from officials and people. Yang Song and Zhang Zhuzheng discussed the issue of taxation for a whole afternoon. Finally, Yang Song said, in principle, I agree with this plan, but whether it will succeed or not depends on the discussion at the next court meeting. By the way, you can send a copy of this plan to Liu Junshi, the administrative office, and the Ministry of Internal Affairs respectively, so that they can take a look in advance. Zhang Zhuzheng bowed and said, thank you, my lord. I obey your command. Chapter 194 Obligation System. 2 days later, there was a court meeting. Although it was only a small court meeting, it became a large court meeting, because it was during the reform period. At the court meeting, Zhang Zhuzheng formally proposed a proposal for tax reform in front of everyone in the council hall. After Yang Song's approval, the tax reform plan was quickly passed with the seconding of Liu, the military advisor, and Zun Yu, the administrative advisor. Of course, there were also objections in the process, and the one who raised the biggest objection was Yang Zhang, who was in charge of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Your Majesty, I think this plan is completely aimed at Your Majesty, so I don't agree with this plan. This is what Yang Zhang said when he publicly opposed it in the council hall. Yang Zhang was not unaware that after the implementation of this reform, there would be great resistance to the finances of the Xia kingdom, but as the saying goes, when you are in your position, you should plan your politics. He is now Yang Song's chief steward, and he is in charge of so many of Yang Song's industries. From his point of view, these tax plans are completely aimed at the private industries of the monarch. In this case, Yang Zhang would certainly object. If he didn't object, wouldn't he be telling others that he was not competent as the housekeeper? But in the end, with Yang Song's consent, his objection was useless, and the curtain of tax reform fell. Your Majesty, I have a suggestion on military construction. Li Jing stood up and proposed, I suggest a major reorganization of the entire army. Yang Song asked seriously, is it necessary to do this? Li Jing knew what Yang Song was asking, and replied, only in this way can the dissatisfaction of various armies and generals be eliminated. Yang Song nodded secretly, this is a good way. During this period, Yang Song, Li Jing, and Liu discussed the reform of the army many times. Although the military reform has been decided, due to the special nature of the army, they have not found the right time to start. Zhang Wei and Yu Shu are easy to deal with. They can be transferred back with a royal decree. But his elite soldiers who have fought hundreds of battles cannot be wasted on the city guards. Moreover, the army that Hu Okubeng was about to lead was positioned as a cavalry brigade composed entirely of cavalrymen, but Zhang Wei only had a battalion of light cavalrymen, which was far from the scale of a brigade. There were enough war horses, but there were no fully trained soldiers, especially those who had fought many battles. How to arrange the extra infantry, how to fill the vacant soldiers. So the army was not stuck. But this is not enough, right? Yang Song immediately asked Li Jing a question. Yang Song had thought of this method, but no matter how he reorganized it, there were only 7,000 soldiers, which was more than a brigade short of the goal of 3 brigades and 2 battalions. The 3 brigades were, the regular infantry brigade commanded by Deking and Lu Su, the cavalry brigade commanded by Hu Okubeng and Liu Qi, and the city guards under Zhang Wei. The 2 battalions were Yang Song's Imperial Guards and Jinai Wei. These 2 battalions also had only half of the soldiers. Yes, even if we have to reorganize, there is still a gap of 4,600 people in the whole army. Li Jing answered with a fist and immediately suggested, therefore, in order to fill such a large gap, I suggest implementing the conscription system. For this reason, I suggest building a new army. The soldiers of this army are not elite soldiers, but conscripts. Li Jing said the solution to the problem of insufficient soldiers. He continued to explain his solution and said, the soldiers recruited by the conscription system only need to serve for 3 years. During the service, those with good performance can be added to the infantry brigade or cavalry brigade. Those with average performance can join the city guard. Those with poor performance will be directly retired. Moreover, during the service of the conscripts, they can also guard various important military points in the country. The conscription of conscripts is carried out once a year, and they rotate every 3 years. In a few years, there will be more and more elite soldiers in Xia State. Not only 3 brigades, but even 5 or 10 brigades can be satisfied in the future. At the end of the explanation, Li Jing felt that the more the better. Yang Song frowned and listened to the explanation, but did not agree to the plan immediately. Instead, he asked Liug, but when, according to this plan, how long will it take to fill the existing establishment? Your Majesty, after the implementation, there will be no new soldiers in the first year. Only from the second year onwards, the first batch of excellent soldiers will be added to the existing establishment. According to the scale of 1 brigade per year, it will take at least 2 years to fill the existing establishment. Liug bowed and replied. Yang Song got the answer he wanted, nodded, and asked Zun Yu, when are you? By the end of this year, how many people will our country have? Your Majesty, the current population has reached 500,000, and it is expected to increase to 800,000 by the end of the year. After Zun Yu answered, he was a little impressed by the speed of development. What about 2 years later? Yang Song continued to ask. Zun Yu smiled slightly and replied, 2 years later, according to my estimation, there will be at least 1.5 million people. A population of 1.5 million, with an army of more than 15,000 people. Although the ratio of 1 to 100 is a bit small, it is more than enough for defense. I didn't expect Li Jing to have such a long-term vision, and he also saw the development speed of Xia State so clearly. He is worthy of being a famous strategist. Haha, then let's do it according to the plan of the pharmacist. Yang Song laughed, and was happy that he had so many outstanding talents. Li Jing also smiled and said, I obey your order. Li Jing has put a lot of effort into the reorganization of the whole army. He decided to complete the reorganization as soon as possible during the period when the enemies outside Shanhaiguan had no time to take care of Xia State. In his plan, he will take Junling to accompany Huokubeng and Liu Qi to Shanhaiguan for a selection of the whole army. Li Jing will select the most elite battalion from the 2 existing brigades, transfer it back to Xianqi City, and add it to Yang Song's Imperial Guards and Jinai Wei. The remaining elites will be reorganized into the infantry brigade according to the organization. They will be responsible for guarding Shanhaiguan and defending the border of Xia State. The rest, those who can ride horses, will be reorganized into Huokubeng's cavalry brigade. The cavalry brigade, which was not fully staffed, was stationed in the former Shangdao city and served as a reserve defense force while conducting training. The remaining ones, who would serve as the seeds of the city guards, were brought back to Xianqi City by Zhang Wei, who immediately took office as the director of his guard bureau. Li Jing would call back the soldiers who were disabled in the previous wars of Xia State, and began to recruit conscripts with these disabled soldiers to train new recruits. Originally, it was the duty of Yang Xin of the military bureau to train new recruits and recruit soldiers, but Yang Xin had only managed the militia and conducted simple training for the militia in the past. Therefore, he had no experience. This time, Li Jing led Yang Xin to demonstrate, and after Yang Xin knew the procedure, Yang Xin would train the new recruits, and Li Jing would lead the conscripts. This was also because there was no suitable manpower, so Li Jing, a strategist who was responsible for overall planning, could only lead an army. When there were enough manpower in the future, the conscript army would also be led by a special general. In fact, there is another way to expand the army and reorganize it, that is to average the soldiers of the 2 existing brigades, average them into 3 brigades, and then fill the 3 brigades with qualified conscripts. This can quickly make the 3 brigades have the strength to fight, but in this way, the combat effectiveness of the 3 brigades is only the strength to fight, which is not guaranteed. If it were normal times, Yang Song would definitely do this, but it is precisely because Xiaoguo now has hostile forces, so it is necessary to have a powerful army to provide protection for Xiaoguo. Li Jing did not make this suggestion because he knew the situation. This method is to sacrifice the combat effectiveness of the 2 brigades in exchange for the time to quickly form an army. The current method is to sacrifice the time to quickly form an army in exchange for a powerful army. Time, Xiaoguo is still sufficient for the time being, otherwise Yang Song would not carry out a comprehensive reform at this time. This is also thanks to the assassin team trained by Chen Ping. Chapter 195 Golden Egg Project. War serves politics. For example, a large part of occupying the Linhai Basin is to complete system tasks and obtain talents in order to achieve faster development. If it weren't for the enemy's repeated invasions, Yang Song would have lost his patience. If Yang Song hadn't carefully analyzed the advantages and disadvantages of occupying the Linhai Basin, if he didn't know that he could hold it after occupying it. After the entanglement and accumulation of various reasons, Yang Song knew that occupying the basin was beneficial to the Xia Kingdom. Therefore, the enemy now calls it the Hetengtao Sea Basin. The place that the Xia Kingdom called the Linhai Basin became the territory of the Xia Kingdom. Report to the king. The navy under my command now has 8 transport ships. Li Bao now spends most of his time training sailors in the navy town. Every time he attends a court meeting, he will rush back to Xianqi City in advance. 2 ships travel between Filang Island and the navy town. 2 ships travel between Fuji Island and the navy town. And 2 ships travel between other small islands. The remaining 2 ships have completed sea trials and can accompany the fleet to the north to open up shipping routes at any time. Li Bao's report made Yang Song understand his thoughts. Li Bao still remembered the several failed plans to go north. However, this time is just right. The land route has been opened up long ago, and the sea route should also be opened up now. Only by advancing by land and sea, the Xianqian mountains will not be a natural barrier to Xia state, but a protective barrier. Yang Song chuckled in his heart and said seriously on the surface, since the needs of going north have been met, I will allow you to lead the fleet north. Thank you, my lord. Li Bao happily clasped his fists and accepted the order, and the joy that could not be suppressed was beyond words. After hearing Li Bao's report on the sea vessels, Lurk frowned and thought for a while, then bowed to Yang Song and said, Your Majesty, I have a suggestion. Bo Wen, just say whatever you want to say. Yang Song affirmed. Lurk bowed again and said, Your Majesty, I suggest that the sea vessels be divided into military and civilian parts. After hearing this, Yang Song suddenly realized that there was still a place where the military and civilians were not separated. He nodded and said, Bo Wen is right. The military is the military and the civilians are the civilians. This has been agreed upon long ago. So he turned to Li Bao and said, You hand over the 6 sea vessels that go back and forth between the islands to the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and the remaining 2 will be responsible for serving as supply ships and transport ships for the fleet. Yes, I accept the order. Li Bao was very happy to accept the order, and he could finally get rid of this burden. He was the commander-in-chief of the ocean giant ship, but he was doing the job of a transport captain, which would not make him happy. Now, someone finally took care of this task, and he was relieved. Yang Zhang, you use these 6 ships to establish a shipping company, which is responsible for the transportation of the islands in the East China Sea. By the way, all the profits from the operation of the company belong to the national treasury, and belong to a state-owned enterprise. This sentence was said to Yang Zhang of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. All state-owned enterprises will be managed by you in the future. Yes, I obey your order. Yang Zhang accepted the order. Yang Song discovered that there was a position for state-owned enterprises between his private property as a monarch and ordinary enterprises, so he asked Yang Zhang to manage state-owned enterprises as well. With this division, the ocean became clear. Civil affairs should be handled by the government, and Navy affairs should be handled by the Navy. Li Bao can finally get rid of the transportation business and carry out the task of exploring the north. This is also because there are enough talents and sea vessels now. Otherwise, even if Yang Song wants to separate military and civilian use, he has no conditions to implement it. Talents are really not too much. For example, if it were not for Liug's timely suggestion just now, Yang Song and Gujuji would have to wait a long time before they discovered the problem in this regard. A month later, the court meeting. Your Majesty, the second batch of gold shipped from Fugi Island this year has arrived at Chianqi City and handed over to the Finance and Taxation Department. It is also 100 tons. Yang Zhanhu reported. In addition, 60 tons of edible meat lizards were transported back. Fugi Island has 30,000 young and strong slaves, mining, breeding meat lizards, and reclaiming land. It has been nearly 5 months now. Because there were slaves in this world, these young and strong people accepted it very quickly after learning that they had become slaves. In addition, reasonable management methods were adopted, so these civilized natives were much more useful than those primitive natives. Moreover, the original primitive natives were gradually depleted, and Yang Song even had the idea of eliminating all the primitive natives. Very good. After Yang Song praised, he turned to Zhang Zhuzheng and asked, Uncle, how much gold has been stored? Can the golden egg plan be implemented? Reply to your majesty, there are 3,000 tons of gold, which can be cast into 120 million exotic gold coins. It is enough to implement the golden egg plan. Zhang Zhuzheng replied. A local gold coin is calculated by the measurement method of Zaya country and weighs about 1/4 of a pound, which means that 1 kilogram can be used to cast 40 gold coins, and 3,000 tons is of course 2,000 gold coins. Because the purity of the gold on Fugi Island is high enough, and the purity of the gold coins in this world is also so after being transported back, it can be used to cast gold coins with a little smelting. Except for a small amount of gold used to cast Zaya country's own gold coins, the rest are all cast into gold coins for circulation in this world. The golden egg plan is a plan formulated to create trouble for the hostile forces outside Shanhaiguan. The plan is to use a large amount of gold coins to impact the enemy's economic market and let the forces outside the pass know what financial war is. It is estimated that after more than 100 million gold coins are put outside the pass, those lords will have to use a gold coin to buy a piece of fruit. Gold still has a certain role in the semi-credit currency implemented by Zaya country, but the role is not too great. For people in this world, gold is hard currency and a standard unit of account. But in the end it is just a currency, and it still has value. As long as there is value, there will be fluctuations in value, and with fluctuations there will be room for manipulation. Under the impact of such a large amount of gold, when gold becomes worthless copper coins, it is entirely possible to imagine what the enemy's society will become. Business is bleak, whether it is a caravan or a chamber of commerce. The lighter ones will be injured, and the heavier ones will be destroyed. Even the Garfield Chamber of Commerce will be seriously injured, and it may even be destroyed. Who let Zhaguo know that they are the organizers of the coalition. This plan is a golden egg plan proposed by Zhang Zhuzheng. Use gold coins as shells to attack the enemy and have a bloodless war. As long as the golden egg plan is well implemented, the war clouds above Zhaguo will naturally dissipate on their own. If it is not well implemented, Zhaguo will only lose a batch of gold at most, and it will have no impact on Zhaguo itself. With assassinations and financial wars going hand in hand, Yang Song believes that with the system, civilization, and culture of this world, it will definitely not be able to withstand such a toss. In this way, at least it will buy Zhaguo some time. Okay, uncle, go and execute it right away. Yang Song confirmed and instructed Chenping, you cooperate with uncle's plan. The assassination plan can be suspended if necessary. Yes. The two men responded in unison. Chapter 196 Industrial Changes. Your Majesty, I have another suggestion. Liug bowed. Yang Song raised his hand to signal Liug to speak directly. Liug said, I suggest that all the factories, shops, and fields under your majesty be integrated and set up enterprises to make them conform to the rules of the empire and facilitate the management of the Yang Nifu. This proposal is really a bit bold. According to Liug's meaning, it is to tell Yang Song to quickly clean up his industry so that the government can collect taxes. Such a suggestion has the same effect as the tax reform proposed by Zhang Zhuzheng, both of which are trying to fleece Yang Song, the monarch. Yang Zhang, did you hear all this? Yang Song asked Yang Zhang, and after Yang Zhang nodded, he continued, after you go down, set up one or several companies or groups. The more ordinary the names are, the better. Yang Song had nothing to say about this suggestion. Anyway, it was all done according to the procedure. As for the name, Yang Song didn't want the people to hear that this was the monarch's industry and they could only buy it regardless of whether it was good or bad. Yang Zhang, at this court meeting, you tell me and everyone present what properties I have. Yang Song wanted to set an example by announcing his own property for everyone to hear. Yang Zhang was a little embarrassed when he heard Yang Song's order. Your Majesty. Your Majesty has many properties, and I can't explain them one by one. Then you can pick out the important ones to talk about. Yang Song didn't expect that his own properties were so many that Yang Zhang couldn't remember them all, so he had to settle for the next best thing. Yes, Your Majesty. Yang Zhang secretly breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this. He didn't want the monarch's property to be announced to the public. The monarch, Yang Song, might be able to openly let him tell all of Yang Song's own properties, but as the general manager of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, Yang Zhang couldn't really tell the truth. Yang Zhang thought for a moment, organized his words and said, Your Majesty, the main industries under your name include smelters, arsenals, hydro-textile factories, cement plants and many other factories. The second is the 3,000 acres of excellent farmland outside Xianqi City. As soon as Yang Zhang finished speaking, before Yang Song could come back to his senses from the many industries he owned, Liug immediately suggested, Your Majesty, I suggest that the upper limit of personal land ownership be reformed immediately. Liug's words were decisive and unquestionable. I suggest abolishing the regulations on the upper limit of personal land ownership and increasing the land regulations for groups and enterprises. After abolishing the regulations on the upper limit of personal land ownership, we can encourage the enthusiasm of the people to open up wasteland and accelerate the development of coastal basins. But we must continue to adhere to the regulations that the land owned cannot be abandoned to prevent the people from occupying the land without using it. And increasing the land regulations for groups and enterprises means that there is no upper limit on the land owned by groups and enterprises, but the more they own, the heavier the tax will be. I hope they will act according to their means. After Liug's long remonstrance, Yang Song also came to his senses. This was a reform for the amount of land that he, as a monarch, had far exceeded the upper limit of personal ownership. Because these reform suggestions were of no use to the officials present, nor to ordinary people, because they had always followed the rule that they could only own as much land as they could cultivate. Only Yang Song, as a monarch, did not follow this rule, and the area of land he owned had long exceeded the data of 20 mu. As for the issue of personal property tax, there are also property taxes and resource taxes proposed by Zhang Zhuzheng. Needless to say, only taxes on enterprises and groups need to be supplemented. But the issue of the upper limit of land ownership cannot be relaxed. Once the restrictions are lifted, land annexation will occur in the future. Yang Song looked at the reward option for the steam engine in the system, thought about it and said, there must be an upper limit for personal ownership of land. Let's raise this upper limit to 5,000 mu. The original 20 mu upper limit of personal ownership of land was largely for the purpose of recruiting soldiers. As a result, this number was still too large and no one could cultivate it, so it was not very attractive to the people. Now the restriction to 5,000 mu is not only to find a reason for the amount of land he owns, but also to pave the way for the expected mechanization era in the future. Yang Song agreed with Liug's suggestion that enterprises own land, and this suggestion must be agreed. With many ministers shouting Your Majesty is wise, the issue of land ownership restrictions came to an end. Your Majesty, I suggest that all civilian industries related to the military be assigned to the Equipment Bureau. Li Jing also suggested. The civilian industries that Li Jing mentioned were actually Yang Song's industries, the most important of which were the arsenals. Because the arsenals were both military institutions and Yang Song's personal property, all the arsenals were actually under the dual management of the Equipment Bureau and the Ministry of Internal Affairs, which was not a good phenomenon. Before Yang Song expressed his opinion, Yang Zong immediately stood up and objected angrily. The monarch's property cannot be taken away for no reason. What are you guys thinking? Is the monarch's property no longer personal property? Is it easy to bully? It's no wonder that Yang Zong was angry. If this happened to other people, they would not be able to think so clearly. Their property was actually divided up in the name of justice. Who can stand this? And if the monarch's property was really divided up in his hands, how can he continue to be the general manager? From the initial tax collection to the current regulations, Yang Zong has injured for a long time. In fact, Yang Song didn't feel good when he heard Li Jing's suggestion. Although he didn't care much about these properties, they were his after all. Now they were quietly divided up like this, and he probably wouldn't have any other personal property left in the future. When Li Jing heard Yang Zong's questions, he immediately realized that there was something wrong with his expression, which was not clear enough. He hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, the Yang Nifu misunderstood me. This is not what I meant. I suggested using the military's military funds to purchase civilian military industries, but it is not for nothing." Yang Song secretly sighed. He actually knew that Li Jing's suggestion was a good thing for the Xia Kingdom, but it was not so friendly to him personally. After hearing that it was not for nothing, it was in line with his psychological expectations. So he waved his hand to interrupt Yang Zong, who was about to say something, and said to Li Jing, "Okay, let's do as you say." "Yes, thank you, Your Majesty. Your Majesty is wise." Li Jing's praise for Yang Song this time was really from the bottom of his heart. It is not easy to meet such a monarch who is so righteous and not particular about trivial matters. After Yang Zong bowed to Yang Song and said yes, he snorted fiercely at the many ministers present, especially Zhang Zhuzheng and Li Jing. He glared at them. Yang Zong was his subject, and so was Li Jing. He had to help the right person instead of his relatives. Yang Song shook his head secretly and thought, "Fortunately, I met him, a person from another world, who knew what was the most advantageous choice. If I met someone else who knew nothing, Li Jing and his men would have been killed long ago." Finally, Yang Song secretly thought about how much of his personal industry belonged to the military industry. After thinking for a long time, he found that there was actually only one arsenal that was completely military industry. Other smelters and other factories were not completely military industries, and civilian use also accounted for a large share of production. Li Jing's suggestion must mean that in the future, Xia state will prohibit civilians from manufacturing weapons, and will also prohibit the creation of weapons businesses. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 197, The Establishment of the Constitution. Regarding Yang Song's industry, it is actually an inevitable change. This has been decided from the beginning. Because at the beginning, the entire territory was in the form of public ownership, and there was no such thing as personal ownership. Only after the privatization reform did personal industries come into being. However, the purchasing power of the people is limited, resulting in a large number of industries that have not been distributed, which are automatically converted into personal industries of Yang Song, the monarch. Therefore, many of these industries were originally public industries, and a large part of them must actually be converted into state-owned industries in order for Xia to develop healthily and rapidly. For example, heavy industries such as smelters and steel mills are best converted into state-owned assets at this stage, and individuals cannot be allowed to affect the country's development plan. However, no one dared to make this proposal, and they could only wait for Yang Song to discover it himself. Fortunately, Yang Song himself had no other ideas. Otherwise, with each other pulling their legs, Xia would have no future to speak of. "Your Majesty, I have a remonstrance." Song Xi stood up and reported, "I and Deputy Director Bao have outlined the general provisions of the Xia Kingdom Constitution. I hope Your Majesty will take a look at it." Song Si said as he handed the booklet he had prepared in advance to the Janai Wei next to him, who then passed it to Yang Song. When Yang Song heard that this was a draft of the constitution, he immediately opened it with curiosity and started reading. The first page was the table of contents. It seemed that Song Si had drafted this constitution according to the final format. The first item in the table of contents was the preface, followed by 4 chapters: general principles, basic rights and obligations of citizens, state institutions, and other regulations. Opening the preface. Preface. Xia State is an excellent and civilized country. It has a long and fine cultural tradition. This constitution stipulates the fundamental system and fundamental tasks of the country in the form of law. It is the fundamental law of the country and has the highest legal effect. All citizens of the country must take the constitution as the fundamental principle of their activities and have the responsibility to safeguard the dignity of the constitution and ensure its implementation. Yang Song then turned to the general outline of the first chapter and read it. Article 1. The fundamental system of the country. Monarchy. Article 2. The status of the monarch. The monarch is the symbol of the country and the symbol of all citizens. Article 3. The succession of the monarch. The throne is hereditary. The incumbent monarch can designate a crown prince after assessment and recognition, and the crown prince can ascend the throne when the throne is vacant. Article 4. The power of the monarch. The monarch has all power in the country. Article 5. The obligations of the monarch. The monarch has the obligation to lead the country to prosperity and strength. Article 10. All land in the country belongs to the country, and individuals, groups, organizations, etc. only have the right to use it. Article 11. Individual economy, private economy, etc. within the scope prescribed by law are all part of the national economy. Article 12. The public property of the country is sacred and inviolable. Article 13. Citizens' lawful private property is sacred and inviolable. Article 20. Writing and language. The state's legal writing is Chinese characters, and the legal language is Chinese. Article 21. Education. The state implements 3 years of compulsory enlightenment education, and encourages and promotes secondary and higher education. Article 22. Science and technology. The state develops science and technology to improve social productivity. Article 25. The state maintains social order, suppresses treason and other criminal activities that endanger national security, sanctions activities that endanger social order, undermine the national economy and other crimes, and punishes and reforms criminals. Article 26. The fundamental task of the state is to build and develop the Xia State into a better, more prosperous, and civilized country. Article 27. The Xia State protects the legitimate rights and interests of foreigners in its territory, and foreigners in its territory must abide by the laws of the Xia State. Yang Song spent a long time reading the general outline alone, and the next 3 chapters are still very thick. So Yang Song said to Song Si and Bao Zeng, after you go back, give everyone present a copy of this draft constitution, and wait until the next Grand Court meeting to make a decision. Yes, I obey your order. The two bowed and accepted the order. After the court meeting was over, Yang Song carefully read the draft constitution in the study. The general outline lists the country's fundamental systems and various regulations, but he was very embarrassed when he saw the 4th article about the power of the monarch. He wanted to lead the Xia kingdom, to develop and grow without restraint, but he was also worried about whether he and the future crown prince could keep their original intentions. Now he can remain calm and lead the Xia kingdom, but when he is old and confused in the future, he will be so prestige that the court officials dare not speak out. If the power is limited, he will not be able to play the various abilities given to it by the system, and can only slow down the development of the Xia kingdom. So he is very embarrassed. Alas, wait until the next big court meeting, and listen to what the court officials say. Yang Song put down the draft constitution in his hand, walked out the door, stood in the corridor, and looked at the scenery of the back garden, and couldn't help but be in a daze. Your Majesty, come down quickly, take a look at the flowers in the garden, they are blooming beautifully. Xiaojun was running around in the garden with her child in her arms. Seeing Yang Song standing on the 2nd floor, she raised her right hand high and waved at him vigorously. The two little maids behind Xiaojuan looked at the child she was holding in one hand nervously, fearing that she would drop it to the ground if she was not careful. Xiaojuan, be careful of the child. You are already a mother, but you are still so ignorant. Xiaojuan shouted loudly at Xiaojuan in the pavilion, and her words of blame were full of pampering. Yang Song looked at Xiaojuan, who was already a new mother, and was still so active, and couldn't help but smile knowingly. He nodded to Xiaojuan, and then went downstairs to the back garden, to appreciate the flowers in the garden with the two girls. It was March of the 6th year of Qianqi, and it was a season for all things to reproduce. The Grand Court meeting at the end of March. You have all read this draft constitution. What do you think? Yang Song asked. The ministers replied, it's up to the king. I'll make the decision. You have also seen the first article about the state institutions in the third chapter of the draft constitution. The court meeting is responsible for the legislative power. You let me make the decision. Does that mean you have no opinion on this draft constitution? Yang Song asked seriously. The ministers replied in unison again, Your Majesty is wise. In fact, it's not that many ministers don't want to make opinions, but they don't know where to start. The constitution is still an unfamiliar concept to them, and they don't know what it means. But Yang Song knows that the birth of the constitution represents the beginning of the rule of law. Helplessly, Yang Song said, then today we will explain this draft constitution one by one and express whether we agree or not. This will be the fundamental law of the Xia kingdom in the future. Yes. The first article of the general outline. What do you think of this article? Do you agree? Yang Song asked directly. The ministers looked at each other, then looked down at the legal provision, and all nodded in agreement. Agree. The next step was to discuss the draft constitution. If Yang Song or the ministers had any questions, Song Xiai and Bao Zeng would explain and clarify them. Let me add a few points. At the end of the discussion, Yang Song saw that no one had put forward new opinions, so he had to propose himself. I suggest adding 2 more articles at the end of the general outline. Article 28. Citizens of Xia should keep in mind the image of Xia when leaving the country, and should not do anything that damages a country's prestige. Article 29. If citizens of Xia encounter unfair treatment or other harm when leaving the country, they should be aware of the responsibility of the motherland behind them to protect the people. Do you have any opinions? Yang Song asked. The ministers agreed. We have no opinions. Your Majesty is wise. What opinions could the ministers have on the 2 articles proposed by Yang Song? These articles were all meaningless regulations at this stage. Finally, after a day of discussion, the draft constitution was finally passed and implemented. Chapter 198 Continental Convention. On this day, Liug and Chenping found Yang Song, greeted each other, sat down, and reported to him, Your Majesty, we have discovered an important piece of information. Yang Song took the booklet handed over by Chenping, and said as he flipped through it, tell me about it. Yes, the assassins outside the Great Wall have collected samples of the Continental Convention, which records some of the history of this world from ancient times to before the formulation of this convention. Chenping replied, in addition, there is some geographical information. When Yang Song heard Chenping say that he had collected geographical information about this world, he put down the booklet in his hand, and urged with great interest, geographical information of this world. Tell me quickly. Yes, Your Majesty. Chenping bowed and replied, there is not much geographical information recorded in the convention. It only records the information north of the Linhai Mountains. Even the information of this Linhai Basin is not recorded. Therefore, I estimate that this convention has not been updated for at least hundreds of years, and this information should not be very accurate. Yang Song waved his hand and said, it doesn't matter, just talk about the recorded part. Yes. Chenping bowed again and replied, there is a vast land to the north of the Linhai Mountains, the ocean to the east, the large mountains and hills outside Shanhaiguan of the Linhai Mountains to the south, a desert named Dusk Desert to the west, and an ice field that is frozen all year round to the north. According to the information obtained by my subordinates, there is also an ocean to the northwest of the desert, and there is a vast plain in the middle of the continent. There are many powerful territories on this plain. Chenping's subordinates are not only assassins, but also other types of intelligence personnel. The information collected has become more and more detailed as time goes by. The union of the various territories outside Shanhaiguan was carried out under the matchmaking of a Garfield Chamber of Commerce. I have already informed the king of this information. After seeing Yang Song nodding confirmation, Chen Ping continued to speak. Another piece of information I learned is about this Chamber of Commerce. This Chamber of Commerce has great power south of the Barren River, so the object of this union is only the territory south of the Barren River. While listening to Chen Ping's narration, Yang Song opened the small map and looked at some maps obtained outside Shanhaiguan. These were all discovered by Zaya's intelligence personnel. The location of the Balong River is more than 2,000 kilometers away from Shanhaiguan in a straight line. It seems that the central plains mentioned by Chen Ping are to the north of the Balong River. This is really a long distance. The Garfield Chamber of Commerce wants to unite all the territories south of the Balong River, which is probably a daydream. Your Majesty, I have also found out that there are only 8 territories near Shanhaiguan that agree to unite, and the rest of the territories have not agreed or participated. Chen Ping bowed and said, therefore, I suggest that only assassins be allowed to harass these 8 territories in the future. You are right. Don't disturb the territories that do not agree to the union in the future. Let these lords know that we in Zaya will avenge grievances and revenges. Yang Song nodded in agreement with the suggestion. As for the fact that the territories that had not agreed to the alliance were harassed by the assassins of the Zaya kingdom, Yang Song had no way to deal with it. It could only be considered their bad luck, because the Zaya kingdom did not obtain complete intelligence. I would like to suggest that the golden egg plan that is about to be launched should also distinguish between targets. LIUG suggested at this time, but as far as I know, financial wars do not distinguish between targets. Yang Song looked at LIUG and said, Bowen, don't think too much. It is inevitable that innocent people will be affected, especially in financial wars. LIUG said seriously, Your Majesty, I will not sympathize with people of different races. The reason I came to see Your Majesty this time is because I have analyzed something through the content of the Continental Convention sent back by Director Chen's men. What is it? Yang Song asked curiously. LIUG bowed and replied, Your Majesty, after reading the Continental Convention, I learned the origin of so many territories in this world. Yang Song heard about the secrets involving the human beings of this world, changed his sitting position, tapped the table lightly with his fingers, and asked, what is the reason? In ancient times, the territory on this continent was actually only a small plain next to the ocean. The rest of the place was actually the same as the current expulsion wasteland, a wasteland, and most of the people living in these wastelands were ferocious beasts. This is because in ancient times, humans in the world established a territory division system in order to open up the living space for humans. It stipulates that, as long as you lead a part of humans to earn a piece of land for survival in the wasteland, you can automatically obtain the status of lord. So that's it. Yang Song said with enlightenment, this is also the reason why the convention prohibits lords from killing each other. Your Majesty is wise. LIUG praised. Not only that, this is also the reason why these lords must abide by it, no matter what ideas they have. As long as these lords violate this agreement, it is equivalent to automatically giving up their status as lords. Not only that, the existence of the feudal system has thoroughly stimulated the exploration ambitions of humans in this world. Chen Ping added on the side. Yang Song asked doubtfully, but I didn't find any ambition of exploration in this person. He was quite familiar with the original human behavior in the Linhai Basin. LIUG replied, Your Majesty, you don't know, this happened 1 or 2,000 years ago. The current BIE have long been content with the status quo, and have lost their ambition to explore. What is the reason that the people of this world have lost their ambition to explore? Yang Song leaned back in his chair, and asked LIUG. LIUG bowed to Yang Song and replied, Your Majesty, this is because in just over 1,000 years, the people of this world have explored all the places that can be explored, only the ocean and the south of the Shianqian Mountains. Even the Shianqian Mountains have been crossed by some people, but I don't know how they have degenerated into primitive people. Suddenly, Yang Song remembered that there was a saying in the previous world that the birthplace of all human beings seemed to be in Hizhao. Is it possible that the true birthplace of human beings in this world is south of the Shankian Mountains? But such speculation has no meaning anymore. What Yang Song wants to know is what impact the Xia Kingdom's current occupation of land will have on the lords outside Shanhaiguin. So Yang Song asked the two of them this question. Your Majesty, this is the most important piece of information that I want to report to you today. Liug nodded to Chenping. After Chenping bowed solemnly to Yang Song, he said in a serious voice, Your Majesty, I learned that among the many territories outside the pass, many lords did not participate in the coalition forces, but were also preparing for war. Liug also bowed solemnly to Yang Song and explained, Your Majesty, I think this is a precursor to great changes on the continent. The situation that has been stable for thousands of years in this world is about to be broken, and the chaos in this world is about to come. But when will the chaos in this world have any impact on the Xia Kingdom? Yang Song also asked seriously. Liug replied, how can you escape from the world while being in it? There will definitely be an impact, but as long as we defend Shanhaiguin, even if the world outside the pass is in flames, the impact on the Xia Kingdom will be very limited, unless. Liug did not say what unless, but Yang Song also knew that Liug was reminding him not to get involved, and getting involved would be courting disaster. But Yang Song shook his head with a wry smile in his heart. Just as Liug said, how can you really escape from the world while being in it? How can you be sure of what will happen in the future? Chapter 199, The Beginning of Chaos. But when do you know what caused this world to be in chaos? Yang Song suppressed his inner feelings and asked Liug. Liug smiled bitterly and replied to Yang Song's puzzled eyes, the reason is still because of our Xia Kingdom. Yang Song was even more confused. Could it be that Xia Kingdom has such a great influence now? He asked. Because of our Xia Kingdom, is it because I ordered the occupation of the Linhe Basin? But even so, aren't the territories outside Shanhaiguin preparing to unite and send troops to their own country? Of course, there is more than just this reason. The occupation of the Linhe Basin is just a trigger, and the king asked Director Chen to send assassins out of the pass to harass, is also part of the reason. Liug frowned, stroking his beard, and his face looked a little bad. Then he explained the real reason he had analyzed. The real reason is still in the human beings of each world. According to my analysis, the human beings in this world have been stable for too long. It is inevitable, no, it is certain, that powerful and ambitious lords will appear. These lords can still endure when there is no precedent, but now. When Liug said this, Yang Song actually knew why. Isn't it just that Xiago gave the lords of this world a good start, allowing these powerful and ambitious lords to find that this world has fallen to this point, allowing them to see the true face of this world. In fact, what Yang Song didn't know was that there was once an ambitious Lord Mike in the Linhe Basin, but the long-term layout was disrupted by the war in Xiago, and he is still regretting it in the prison of Xiago. But now Xiago has occupied the Linhe Basin, and it is impossible to give it up for the peace of this world. Yang Song has not yet shown mercy to the enemy. This is not a hot-blooded anime. Seeing that Yang Song had understood what he said, Liug continued, Your Majesty, as long as our country can resist the attack of the coalition forces in the future, or the coalition forces disappear under our country's strategy, this world will inevitably be in chaos. Liug said the last few words decisively, and with extraordinary certainty. It seems that there are still two choices for the future of this world. One way is to defeat the Xia Kingdom, let the lords of this world know that the effectiveness of the Continental Convention is still inviolable, and then restore the status quo, and continue to maintain the Dark Peace. The other way is that the Xia Kingdom wins, or there is no coalition force to counterattack, then this world will be wonderful. It seems that there are two ways, but will the Xia Kingdom let the enemy choose the first way? The answer is of course impossible. So the future of this world has been doomed, since the first day Yang Song came to this world. Yang Song rubbed his forehead with his right hand, sorted out the information he had obtained today from beginning to end, and finally asked, how much time is left in this world? Liug certainly would not understand this question as the world has entered the countdown to doomsday. He thought about it and replied cautiously, 3 years at most, or even less. 3 years is the longest period. In LIUG's mind, there is only about a year before the world will be in chaos. If we only count the time of chaos, it is actually already in chaos. Don't forget the 600,000 or 700,000 refugees who were driven out of Shanhaiguin. They are the source of chaos. After listening to LIUG's answer, Yang Song sighed and ordered LIUG, Bowen, speed up the reform. If anyone delays or blocks it, tell me that I will never let him off easily. I obey your order. LIUG clasped his fist and accepted the order. As a military advisor to the monarch, he is responsible for supervising the progress of the reform. It is his duty to supervise the progress of the reform. Then Yang Song ordered Chenping, speed up the collection of intelligence outside the pass. Send as many spies as possible and explore as far as possible. I want to know the intelligence outside the pass as soon as possible. Chenping bowed and accepted the order. Yes, I accept the order. After the two of them left, Yang Song picked up the booklet that Chenping had handed to him at the beginning and opened it. It also recorded what they had just discussed, but there was one record that Yang Song was very concerned about. That is, the refugees outside the pass began to become bandits, rob homes, and even rob the manor of a small noble. After reading these news, Yang Song put down the booklet, walked to the back garden with his hands behind his back, looked at a bright red rose, and was quite emotional about what he had done over the years. He found that he was the butterfly on the other side of the ocean, using his powerful wings to stir up countless hurricanes in the world, or the kind of hurricanes that destroyed the world. Yang Song is not compassionate, and he doesn't blame himself for the chaos in this world. He is not in the mood to pay attention to a group of aliens with reproductive isolation. He just has a sense of responsibility to participate in the general trend of this world. A little excited, a little worried, and a little sighing. Sir, what are you doing standing here? Xiaolan was holding Yang Xian, passing by the path, and saw Yang Song standing in front of a flower in a daze, so she stepped forward and asked. Yang Song was brought back to reality by Xiaolan's question. He turned around and smiled at Xiaolan, saying, nothing, it's just that there are more flowers here, just like you, Xiaolan. Sir, what are you talking about? It's broad daylight, and there are other people here. Xiaolan blushed immediately, and seeing the two little maids behind her blushing, she couldn't help but stomped her feet and refused, not even realizing that there was anything wrong with her words. Yang Song smiled and said, then it can be done at night. Your Majesty. Xiaolan realized what she had just said at this time, and couldn't help but chop the ground lightly at Yang Song, and turned and ran away with the giggling child. Yang Song looked at Xiaolan's somewhat anxious figure, and the smile on his mouth slowly returned to calm. He didn't want his family to worry about him, so he had to use this method to make Xiaolan, a careful woman, look charming. Yang Song went out of the house in the afternoon, and came to the military camp of Xianqi City. He found Li Jing, who was training soldiers, and told Li Jing the information Liug and Chenping told him. He stood on the stage and looked at the new recruits who were training enthusiastically below the stage. He sighed to Li Jing, pharmacist, you have to hurry up to improve the combat effectiveness of the Xia army. Your Majesty. Li Jing also stood on the stage and clasped his fists in full armor and replied, Your Majesty, with the current population of Xia, the army can be expanded to 30,000, and there are more than 100,000 militias. Li Jing meant that, as long as Yang Song needed it, he could always raise an army of more than 100,000, so there was no need to worry too much. In the laws of the Xia kingdom, all the people are soldiers. The militia is all young and strong men. If necessary, even strong women can be trained. Therefore, the militia recruited for the expansion of the army are all militiamen who have received basic military training. Now they are just conducting basic consolidation training, and then further advanced training, such as flexible combination of tactics and battle formations. If Yang Song had not always had an urgent sense of crisis, there would be no Xia kingdom today. It is precisely because Yang Song has laid a good foundation that Xia kingdom can cope with any external impact now. That's good. Pharmacist, I have to work harder for you during this period. The military reform must be carried out as soon as possible. Within 1 year, the infantry brigade and the cavalry brigade must have strong combat effectiveness. Yang Song set a time requirement. This is my duty. Why should I work hard? Your Majesty, I'm sorry for your humble servant. I hereby issue a military order to ensure that the task will be completed within 1 year. Li Jing stood at attention and clasped his fists and issued a military order seriously. That night, when Yang Song returned to his study, he found a small delicate vase with a big red rose on his desk. Wasn't this the same flower he saw during the day? His heart suddenly warmed up. Chapter 200 External Strategy. Your Majesty, I have something to report about the Golden Egg Project. A few days later, Lurk and Zhang Zhuzheng came together. What is it? Is there a problem? Yang Song put down the brush in his hand and asked seriously. Zhang Zhuzheng stood up and bowed and replied with an unpleasant face. Your Majesty, I'm ashamed of your trust. There is a fatal loophole in the Golden Egg Project. Yang Song did not speak, but stared at Zhang Zhuzheng and waited for his explanation. At the beginning, the other party patted his chest and promised that this plan would bring miraculous effects to the Xia Kingdom. Your Majesty, the Golden Egg Project needs a trade window, otherwise so many gold coins can't flow to the outside of the Great Wall for no reason. Zhang Zhuzheng explained. Lurk added, now that the outside of the Great Wall is so chaotic, it is not a good time to open up trade routes. Moreover, our country is in a hostile state with the outside world. It won't be long before the outside of the Great Wall. It seems that Lurk has become a characteristic of expressing his meaning without finishing it. Fortunately, he did not say half of it, but made his meaning clear. Otherwise Yang Song could not stand this tone. Yes, 3,000 tons of gold coins cannot be carried by 1 or 2 people. It would take 1,500 carriages to carry them. If only intelligence personnel were used, it would take tens of thousands of people and 1 person to transport them. The casting of gold coins is very simple. First, the gold is melted into pieces of gold plates with the same thickness as the gold coins. Then these gold plates are put under the hydraulic press for stamping. 10 gold coins can be made with 1 press. These gold coins piled up quickly under the stamping. Until now, the 3,000 tons of gold have not been consumed, and it is unknown how long it will take to complete them. And there is no need to worry about not being able to use them. The gold coins that really can't be used can be turned into gold ingots as long as they are returned to the furnace. Lurk looked at Yang Song, who was silent, and said, Your Majesty, I don't know how Your Majesty views these foreigners. Do you rule them or clear them out? And what is the state of Xia state with these forces? Will they be forever hostile or coexist peacefully? In fact, the essence of Lurk's asking these 2 questions is to ask, what is the ultimate goal of Xia state? Yang Song has never thought deeply about this question. In the past, he thought about how to lead his people to survive. After he gained a firm foothold, he thought about developing and expanding the country. Now the foothold of the Xia Kingdom has been completely established, and the development and expansion is continuing steadily. He only thought about the future when he was free, and never thought about it in depth. At this time, Lurk's question really stumped him. Yang Song thought about it for a long time, but couldn't figure it out. Moreover, this is the principle that determines the future behavior of the Xia Kingdom. He dare not make a decision in his mind. But when, I wonder what your plan is? Yang Song asked Lurk. Since he didn't know, he would ask someone who knew. Lurk bowed his hands and said seriously, Your Majesty, I have 2 strategies for you to choose from. One is to close the country and strictly guard the pass. With the current development speed of Xia state, it will become extremely powerful in a few dozen or 100 years. When the time comes, we will go out to compete for hegemony in the world, and we will definitely be able to sweep the world with the momentum of sweeping the caves. The second is to open the window to the outside world, exchange what we have with people of other races, so that the excellent civilization of our country can be spread to the world, and educate other races. Although there are racial barriers, in the long run, although people of other races have different hearts, they also have the intention of yearning to submit. This is also because Xia state has enough capital to stand on its own, so there will be such foresight in these 2 choices. In the final analysis, it is because Xia state is not strong enough now, otherwise there will be no such problem. If you are really strong, you don't have to make a choice. Yang Song thought about it, but it was still difficult to make up his mind, so he said, "This issue will be raised at the next court meeting, and let the ministers discuss and decide." "Yes, Your Majesty." Lurk saw Yang Song's hesitation and knew his embarrassment, so he took the order. Yang Song was under tremendous pressure as a monarch. The court meeting was held as scheduled 4 days later. At the meeting, Lurk proposed, in the future, Xia state has two choices. One is to close the country to the outside world, and the other is to open up to the outside world. Please make the decision, Your Majesty. I don't know what you think of these two choices. If you have other choices, you can speak frankly. As expected, Yang Song threw the question out and asked the ministers to discuss it. Sun Yu replied first, "I suggest choosing to close the country to the outside world. Because the existing territory has not been fully developed, we should not cause more trouble." Chang Sheng added, "I second the proposal. At this stage, we should increase the population and strengthen the national strength to wait for changes. I suggest opening trade routes and opening up border markets. We should not open up all the territory to prevent our country from showing its true strength." Chen Ping suggested, "I agree with what Director Chen said. Opening trade routes can collect intelligence and help our country civilize the northern barbarians." Zhuz replied, "I also agree to open up the trade route to the outside world. In this way, the Golden Egg Plan may be implemented." Zhang Zhuzheng actually agreed to open up to the outside world at this time. "I oppose opening up the trade route. Opening up the trade route will make the barbarians in the north suddenly greedy for our country's wealth. Has Your Majesty forgotten the matter of the original Bill City?" Chang Sheng has been brooding over this matter. In general, the ministers in the council hall are divided into two factions, some agreeing, some opposing, and each has sufficient reasons, making Yang Song's already difficult thoughts even more confused. When the ministers were still citing classics and using history as evidence, Lurk stood up and said loudly, "Your Majesty, everyone, listen to what I have to say." The ministers stopped arguing and looked at Lurk, waiting for his next words. Lurk is the monarch's military advisor, so they still have to respect him. Seeing that the council hall had quieted down, Lurk continued, "I suggest building a market outside Shanhaiguan to serve as a window to the outside world for the Xia kingdom. This is a brilliant plan by Lurk." Sun Yu's eyes lit up, and he agreed loudly, "In this way, we can close the border and show goodwill to the outside world. This is a brilliant plan. You are worthy of being a military advisor. This is killing two birds with one stone. I'm not as smart as Lurk. My plan can also be implemented." Many ministers discussed it one after another. All of them agreed. After seeing this, Yang Song's expression was also brightened, and he asked, "Does anyone else have any opinions? If not, then let's do it according to what the military advisor said." "Yes, Your Majesty is wise." All the ministers agreed in unison. "Your Majesty, where should this market be built?" The land outside the pass is in chaos, with refugees like water and bandits like stars. Although Sun Yu was the head of the administrative office, he had also heard about the situation outside Shanhaiguan. Yang Song nodded slightly upon hearing this, agreeing with Sun Yu's question, and he turned his gaze to Lurk. Without waiting for Lurk to reply, Chen Ping stood up and replied, "Your Majesty, Director Sun, I know a place suitable for building a market." "Where is it?" Yang Song asked. Chen Ping replied, "There is a valley 10 kilometers away from Shanhaiguan, and the trade route passes through this valley. As long as a simple wall is built at the entrance of the valley can be used as a market." Yang Song opened the small map and checked it. After finding the place Chen Ping mentioned, he saw that there was a valley entrance of more than 300 meters wide between the two mountains. Just as Chen Ping said, there was an open area behind. Although it was not big, it was more than enough to serve as a market. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.